She walked back into the room that destroyed her, and this time the devil himself was waiting. 3 years ago, Selene Vale exposed the truth and lost everything. Tonight, she's standing face to face with Lucien Virelli, the billionaire who controls the city's darkest secrets. One of them ruined her life. The other might be her only way back. But when power and betrayal collide, survival isn't guaranteed. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. You won't believe where this goes. The champagne tasted like poison going down. Selene Vale stood just inside the entrance of the Blackthorn Museum's grand ballroom, her fingers wrapped tight around the stem of a crystal flute she had no intention of drinking from. The glass was cold. Her hands were colder. She'd been standing there for 90 seconds, long enough for every head in the room to turn, for every conversation to pause mid-sentence, for the weight of 300 stares to press against her chest like a physical thing. She knew what they were thinking. She could read it in their faces, in the way mouths hung open just slightly, in the widening of eyes that recognized her but couldn't quite believe she'd had the audacity to show up here. Not after what happened. Not after she'd been erased. The woman who used to be somebody. The woman who'd disappeared. The woman who shouldn't be here. Selene's pulse hammered in her throat, but she kept her chin level, her expression blank. She'd practiced this in the mirror for an hour before leaving her apartment. The art of looking unbothered when your entire body was screaming at you to run. Her dress was simple, black, expensive in a way that didn't announce itself. She'd bought it with money she didn't have because tonight required armor, and armor didn't come cheap. The ballroom was obscene. Gilded walls rose 30 feet to a ceiling painted with cherubs and clouds, lit by 3 massive chandeliers that threw fractured light across marble floors. Round tables dressed in white linen filled the space, each one surrounded by people who measured their worth in billions, not millions. This was the annual Virelli Foundation Gala, the kind of event where a single dinner plate cost more than most people's monthly rent, where fortunes were negotiated over dessert, where power moved through the room like a living thing. And Selene didn't belong. Not anymore. She forced herself to take a step forward. Then another. Her heels clicked against the marble, the sound swallowed immediately by the low hum of conversation resuming around her. People were talking again, but not to her. Never to her. They were talking about her, leaning toward each other with expressions that mixed curiosity and contempt. Their voices pitched just low enough that she couldn't make out the words, but high enough that she knew they wanted her to know. Someone laughed, sharp and bright and cruel. Selene's jaw tightened. 3 years. 3 years since she'd walked out of Virelli Corporation's downtown headquarters with a cardboard box full of personal items and a security escort that made sure she never came back. 3 years since her name had been dragged through every financial publication in the country, since her phone stopped ringing, since doors that had once opened automatically slammed shut in her face. 3 years since the people in this room, these same people, some of them, the ones staring at her now like she was a ghost, had decided she no longer existed. And maybe she hadn't. Not really. Not in any way that mattered. But she was here now. A waiter drifted past with a tray of hors d'oeuvres that probably cost $50 each. Selene ignored him. Her stomach was twisted too tight to eat. She scanned the room, looking for, she didn't even know what. A familiar face. An ally. Someone who might remember her as something other than a scandal. Nothing, just wealth and silk and judgmental stares. Her invitation had arrived 2 weeks ago in a cream-colored envelope with her name handwritten in elegant script across the front. No return address, no explanation. Just the invitation itself, embossed with the Virelli Foundation logo, requesting the honor of her presence at this year's gala. She'd stared at it for 3 days, trying to figure out if it was a mistake or a trap or some kind of sick joke. In the end, she'd decided it didn't matter. She came anyway, because somewhere beneath the fear and the humiliation and the anger that had lived in her chest for 3 years, there was something else, something sharper, something that tasted like gasoline and felt like a lit match. She came because she needed to know who sent it, and she came because she refused to stay invisible forever. The crowd shifted, and Selene caught a glimpse of the far end of the ballroom where a small stage had been set up for the evening speeches. That's when she saw him. Lucien Virelli, her breath caught. He stood near the stage, surrounded by a tight circle of men in tailored suits, who leaned in when he spoke and laughed when he didn't. Even from across the room, he commanded attention in a way that felt effortless and absolute. Tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on currency or carved into marble. He wore a black tuxedo that fit like it had been sewn onto his body, and when he moved, the crowd around him adjusted without thinking, making space, orienting themselves toward him like planets around a sun. Selene had never met him, not officially. She'd seen him in passing during her time at Virelli Corporation, glimpses in hallways, his silhouette behind frosted glass conference room doors, his voice echoing from executive floors she'd never been important enough to access. He was the kind of powerful that didn't require proximity. You felt it from a distance. Ruthless, people said. Cold. Untouchable. Dangerous. The kind of man who could ruin your life without learning your name, or save it without asking permission. As if sensing her stare, Lucien's gaze lifted, swept across the ballroom, found her, and stopped. The air left Celine's lungs. He didn't look away, didn't blink, just held her there with eyes so dark they looked black from where she stood, his expression unreadable, his attention so focused it felt like being pinned beneath a spotlight. The men around him kept talking, but he wasn't listening anymore. He was looking at her, seeing her. And then he did something that made every nerve in Celine's body go electric. He raised his glass, slow and deliberate, a silent acknowledgement that crossed the space between them like a declaration. The room noticed. Of course the room noticed. Conversations stuttered, heads turned. The woman next to Selene, some socialite in diamonds and desperation, made a sound like she'd been slapped. Because Lucien Virelli didn't acknowledge people. He didn't raise glasses in recognition or offer silent toast to strangers at his own gala. He was the center of gravity here, the sun around which everything else revolved, and people came to him. He didn't come to them, but he just looked at Selene Vale like she mattered, and suddenly, impossibly, every single person in that ballroom realized they'd missed something crucial. The king of the city knew her name. Celine's hand trembled around her champagne flute. She didn't raise it back. Didn't nod, didn't smile. She just stood there, frozen, while her mind raced through possibilities that made no sense. Why would he? How could he? What did he? Lucien lowered his glass, said something to the men around him, started walking toward her. Oh God. Celine's first instinct was to run. Her second was to stand her ground. Her third was to figure out what the hell was happening before she did something stupid, like faint or vomit or start laughing hysterically, because this couldn't be real. None of this could be real. And yet, he was moving through the crowd with the kind of ease that came from never being told no. People parted without him asking. Conversations died as he passed. And his eyes never left hers. Celine's throat went dry. She should leave. She should turn around and walk out of this ballroom and never look back, because whatever this was, whatever was about to happen, it wasn't going to end well for her. It never did. Powerful men didn't cross rooms to help people like her. They crossed rooms to finish what they'd started. But her feet wouldn't move. Lucien closed the distance in seconds that felt like hours. Up close, he was even more intimidating than she'd imagined, not because of his height or his build, though both were considerable, but because of the way he looked at her, like she was a puzzle he'd already solved, like he knew things about her she hadn't told anyone, like he'd been waiting for her. Miss Vale. His voice was low, controlled, with an edge that suggested he didn't waste words. I'm glad you came. Selene blinked, tried to find her voice, failed. I wasn't sure you would, he continued, as if her silence was an answer. The invitation was unconventional. You sent it. It wasn't a question. I did. Why? Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile. More like the ghost of one, there and gone so fast she might have imagined it. Because we have unfinished business. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. The certainty in his voice made her stomach drop. He knew. Somehow, he knew. About the documents she'd found 3 years ago. About the offshore accounts and the shell companies and the money that had moved through Virelli Corporation like water through a sieve. About everything she'd tried to expose before someone shut her down so hard and so fast she'd barely had time to understand what was happening. But if he knew, then why was she still standing here? Why wasn't she? Come with me. It wasn't a request. I don't think, Miss Vale. He leaned in just slightly, his voice dropping to something that felt like a secret. You walked into this room tonight because you wanted answers. I'm offering them. The question is whether you're brave enough to hear them. Brave enough. The words hit like a challenge, and Selene felt something in her chest ignite. She'd spent 3 years being careful, being small, being invisible. She'd spent 3 years convincing herself that safety mattered more than truth, that survival meant keeping her head down and her mouth shut. But she hadn't come here to be safe. Fine. The word came out harder than she intended. Lead the way. Lucien's expression shifted, approval maybe, or something close to it. He gestured toward a side door near the stage, then started walking without checking to see if she followed. She did. Because at this point, what else was there to lose? The side door led to a hallway that felt like a different world. Gone were the chandeliers and the marble and the suffocating weight of 300 judgmental stairs. This was all dark wood and dim lighting, the kind of space designed for privacy, for conversations that couldn't happen in public. Lucien walked ahead of her, his stride confident, unhurried. Selene followed at a distance, her heart hammering, her mind spinning through worst-case scenarios that all ended with her disappearing again, permanently this time. He stopped in front of a heavy wooden door, pushed it open, stepped inside, held it for her. The room beyond was small, an office, maybe, or a private study. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined with volumes that looked older than the building itself. A single lamp on the desk cast warm light across surfaces polished to a mirror shine. Selene hesitated in the doorway. "Close the door," Lucien said. She didn't move. He sighed, walked to the desk, poured 2 glasses of something amber from a crystal decanter. "I'm not going to hurt you, Miss Vale. If I wanted you gone, you'd be gone." The casual brutality of the statement should have terrified her. Instead, it steadied something inside her chest. At least he was honest. She stepped inside. Let the door click shut behind her. Lucien held out one of the glasses. "Drink?" "No. Suit yourself." He took a sip, watching her over the rim. "Do you know why you're here?" "You said we have unfinished business." "We do. But that's not what I asked." Selene's jaw tightened. "Then I don't know. 3 years ago, you uncovered evidence of fraud inside Virelli Corporation. Significant fraud, millions of dollars moving through accounts that shouldn't have existed, funneled through shell companies registered in countries with convenient banking laws. You documented everything, built a case, took it to your supervisor." Her hands clenched into fists. "And they destroyed me for it." "They destroyed you because they were complicit." The words hung in the air like smoke. Selene's voice came out rough. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying the corruption you found was real. I'm saying the people you trusted were involved. And I'm saying—" He paused, his eyes locked on hers. "I'm saying you were set up." The floor tilted. Selene reached for the back of a chair, steadying herself. "That's impossible. I saw the documents. I verified the accounts. You found exactly what someone wanted you to find." "Who?" "My cousin." Lucien set his glass down with controlled precision. "Marcus Virelli, chief financial officer at the time. He'd been skimming for years, hiding it well enough that even our auditors missed it. But he knew eventually someone would notice. So he created a trail, left breadcrumbs, made sure the right person stumbled across them at the right time. Me. You." Selene's mind raced. "Why?" "Because you were smart enough to recognize fraud but young enough to be discredited. Because you had a reputation for integrity, which meant if you went down, the investigation would die with you. And because," his voice went colder, "because Marcus needed a scapegoat, and you fit the profile." The room spun. Selene pressed her palm against the chair, her knuckles white. "You're lying." "I'm not." "Then where is he? Where's Marcus?" "Gone. Disappeared 2 weeks after you were fired. Took $40 million with him. We haven't found him yet." Lucien picked up his glass again, studied the liquid inside like it held answers. "By the time I realized what had happened, you'd already been blacklisted. Your career was over. Your reputation was destroyed. And no one would listen when you tried to tell the truth, because Marcus had done his job too well." Selene couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The past 3 years replayed in her mind like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. The accusations, the hearings, the lawyers who'd advised her to stay quiet, the doors slamming shut one after another until there was nowhere left to go. She'd spent 1,000 nights wondering what she'd done wrong, where she'd made the mistake that cost her everything. And all along, it had been deliberate. She'd been chosen. Why are you telling me this now? Her voice cracked on the last word. Lucien looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Because I'm going to fix it." "You can't fix this." "Watch me." The certainty in his tone made her want to scream, or cry, or both. "Why would you even care? I'm nobody. You're Selene Vale." He set his glass down with a sharp click. 3 years ago, you were one of the most respected international development strategists in the country. You'd built programs in 12 countries, secured funding for infrastructure projects that were supposed to be impossible. You had a reputation for getting results in places where everyone else had given up. He paused. And then Marcus destroyed all of that because he needed a convenient victim. Selene's throat burned. "That doesn't explain why you care." "Doesn't it?" Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Something sharp and dangerous and impossible to name. Selene felt it in her chest, in the way her pulse kicked up, in the sudden heat that flooded her face. "I don't understand," she whispered. "You will." Lucien moved closer, stopping just at the edge of her personal space, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Here's what's going to happen, Miss Vale. In 10 minutes, we're going to walk back into that ballroom together. I'm going to introduce you to everyone who matters in this city. And by the end of tonight, every person who ignored you, every person who watched your career burn and did nothing, they're going to remember exactly who you are." "Why would they listen?" "Because I'm going to make them listen." The promise in his voice was absolute, terrifying, and somehow, against every instinct screaming at her to run, Selene believed him, but belief came with a price. "What do you want in return?" she asked. Lucien smiled then, a real one this time, sharp at the edges. "Now you're asking the right questions. I'm serious. So am I." He reached up, adjusted his cufflink with casual precision. "I don't want anything from you, Miss Vale. Consider this restitution. Justice, if you prefer. What Marcus did to you was wrong. What happened to your career was wrong. And I have the power to correct it." He paused. "So I will." It was too easy, too clean. Men like Lucien Virelli didn't hand out justice because it was the right thing to do. They dealt in leverage and control and transactions that always came due eventually. But Selene was tired of being invisible, tired of starting over in cities where no one knew her name, tired of watching her past define her future while she had no say in any of it, and maybe, just maybe, she was tired of being afraid. "Okay," she heard herself say, "let's do it." Lucien's eyes gleamed. "Then let's begin." He offered his arm like they were headed to a ballroom dance instead of walking into a war zone. Selene hesitated only a moment before sliding her hand into the crook of his elbow. His jacket was warm beneath her palm, solid, real. They walked back through the dim hallway together, their footsteps synchronized, and with every step Selene felt something inside her shift. Not hope. Hope was too fragile, too easily destroyed. This was something harder, something that felt like steel sharpening against stone. When they reached the ballroom door, Lucien paused, looked down at her. "Ready?" "No, absolutely not. This was insane." "Yes," she lied. The corner of his mouth twitched. Then he pushed open the door, and they stepped back into the light. The reaction was immediate. Conversation stopped mid-word, heads swiveled. Every eye in the room found them, found her, standing beside Lucien Virelli like she belonged there, like she'd always belonged there. And then Lucien started walking, pulling her with him into the center of the ballroom, straight toward a cluster of people Selene recognized from photographs and business journals. CEOs, politicians, the kind of power brokers who decided the fate of cities over cocktails. They looked up as Lucien approached. Their expressions shifted from curiosity to calculation the moment they saw Selene on his arm. "Gentlemen," Lucien said smoothly, "I'd like you to meet Selene Vale, international development specialist, humanitarian strategist, and someone who's about to become very important to all of you." One of the men, silver-haired, expensive suit, face weathered by decades of corporate warfare, frowned. Vale? That name sounds familiar. It should, Lucien said. 3 years ago, she exposed the largest fraud case in Virelli Corporation's history, saved the company millions, and then she was punished for it. The group went silent. Selene's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. This was the moment they'd tear her apart, remind everyone of the scandal, ensure she'd never work again. Well, the silver-haired man said slowly, that changes things, doesn't it? And just like that, the narrative shifted, because Lucien Virelli had decided it would. For the next hour, Selene watched her life transform in real time. Lucien introduced her to diplomats who'd launched careers on projects smaller than the ones she'd built, to nonprofit directors who controlled budgets that could change countries, to investors who measured opportunities in impact, not just profit. And every single one of them listened when she spoke, because Lucien had made them listen. It was intoxicating, terrifying, wrong in ways she couldn't articulate but felt in her bones. This wasn't justice. This was power. Raw and absolute and wielded with surgical precision to reshape reality according to Lucien's will. And he was using it for her. Why? The question burned in her mind even as she smiled and shook hands and accepted business cards from people who'd once crossed the street to avoid her. Even as job offers started filtering in, verbal at first, then increasingly concrete. Director positions, consulting roles, opportunities that would have been impossible yesterday, but were suddenly, impossibly, within reach. By the time the speeches began, Selene's head was spinning. She stood near the back of the crowd, Lucien beside her, watching as various foundation executives took the stage to discuss humanitarian efforts and global initiatives and the importance of making a difference. The words washed over her like background noise. All she could focus on was the man standing next to her, the dangerous, ruthless billionaire who'd decided, for reasons she still didn't understand, to rebuild the future someone else had stolen. Why? As if reading her mind, Lucien leaned in slightly. His voice was low enough that only she could hear. You're wondering what I want. It wasn't a question. Selene kept her eyes forward. Yes. The truth? Please. A pause. Then, I want to see what happens when someone like you gets the power you deserve. Her breath caught. You were good at what you did, Miss Vale. Better than good. You built things that lasted, changed lives, made impossible projects possible, and then someone took that from you because you were inconvenient. His tone went colder. I don't like waste, and your talent rotting away because Marcus needed a scapegoat? That's waste. So this is about efficiency. She tried to keep the bitterness out of her voice. Failed. No. Lucien turned to look at her fully. This is about power, real power. The kind that doesn't just control outcomes, it creates them. You had a taste of that before Marcus destroyed you. I'm giving you the chance to taste it again. And what do you get? His smile was sharp enough to cut. We'll find out, won't we? Before Selene could respond, a commotion near the entrance pulled their attention. Cameras flashing, voices rising, a cluster of people pushing forward with phones and recording equipment. Press. What? Selene started. They were invited, Lucien said calmly. I made sure of it. Her stomach dropped. Why? Because your story isn't just about you anymore, Miss Vale. It's about every person who's been destroyed for telling the truth. Every whistleblower who's been silenced. Every career that's been burned to protect powerful men. He straightened his tie with casual precision. And as of tonight, you're the face of that story. I didn't agree to this. You agreed the moment you walked through those doors. Before Selene could process that, a reporter broke through the crowd, microphone extended, camera rolling. Mr. Virelli, is it true you're reinstating Selene Vale after the corruption scandal? Lucien's expression didn't change. Miss Vale was never guilty of any wrongdoing. The corruption she exposed was real. The people who destroyed her career were the actual criminals. And yes, I'm correcting that injustice tonight. Another reporter pushed forward. Miss Vale, what do you have to say about your return? Selene froze. The camera lens stared at her like an accusation. Her mouth went dry. Her mind went blank. Then she felt Lucien's hand at the small of her back. Steady. Grounding. reminding her she wasn't alone. And something in Celine's chest hardened. She'd spent 3 years hiding, 3 years being afraid, 3 years letting other people control the narrative of her life. Not anymore. She stepped forward, lifted her chin, met the camera head on. "I have nothing to be ashamed of," she said. Her voice was rough but clear. "I told the truth 3 years ago. I paid the price for it. And now the world knows I was right all along." The cameras exploded with flashes. Questions erupted from all sides. And somewhere in the chaos, Selene felt Lucien's hand slide away from her back, felt him step back, giving her the spotlight, letting her own the moment. And for the first time in 3 years, Selene Vale felt visible again. Not as a victim, not as a scandal, but as herself. The press conference, if it could be called that, lasted 20 minutes before Lucien's security team politely but firmly escorted the reporters out. By then, the story was already breaking. Phones buzzed. Notifications lit up screens across the ballroom. Social media exploded with headlines that painted Selene as everything from a vindicated whistleblower to a phoenix rising from the ashes. It was too much. All of it was too much. When the crowd finally dispersed, when the cameras stopped flashing and the questions stopped coming, Selene found herself standing alone near one of the gilded pillars, her hands shaking so badly she had to press them against her sides to keep anyone from noticing. Lucien appeared beside her, silent, watching. "I need air," Selene managed. He nodded toward a set of glass doors that led to a terrace. "This way." The night air hit her like a slap, cold and sharp and real. Selene walked to the edge of the terrace, gripped the stone railing, and tried to remember how to breathe. Behind her, Lucien's footsteps were quiet against the stone. "You did well," he said. "I'm going to be sick." "No, you're not." "You don't know that." "I do." He moved to stand beside her, his silhouette dark against the city lights sprawling below. "You're stronger than you think, Miss Vale. Stronger than Marcus ever anticipated. Stronger than even I expected." Selene laughed. It came out jagged. "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough." "You know what's in a file. That's not the same thing." Lucien was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You're right. I don't know what it felt like to lose everything. I don't know what it's like to be erased, but I know what it looks like. And I know—" He paused. "I know that most people would have stayed home tonight. Most people would have burned that invitation and pretended it never arrived. But you didn't. You walked into that room knowing exactly what was waiting for you, knowing they'd stare, knowing they'd judge, and you did it anyway." "That's not strength," Selene said quietly. "That's desperation." "Maybe." His voice softened. "Or maybe it's both." They stood in silence, the city breathing below them, the gala continuing somewhere behind the glass doors. Selene's mind was a storm of emotions she couldn't name, relief and terror and anger and something that felt dangerously close to hope. "What happens now?" she asked finally. "Now?" Lucien considered. "Now you go home, sleep. Let tonight settle. Tomorrow, you'll start getting calls, job offers, interview requests, media inquiries. You'll need to decide which ones matter. And you? I'll make sure the right people keep paying attention." Selene turned to look at him, really look at him. In the moonlight, his features were sharper, harder, but there was something in his eyes, something she couldn't quite read. Not cruelty, not calculation, almost like recognition. "I still don't understand why you're doing this," she said. Lucien's jaw tightened. "Maybe I'm tired of watching talent go to waste." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have tonight." They stood there, two strangers connected by a scandal neither of them had chosen, and Selene felt something shift in the space between them. Something dangerous, something that tasted like possibility and felt like a cliff edge. She should step back. Should put distance between herself and this man who'd just upended her entire world in a single night. Instead, she stayed exactly where she was. "Thank you," she said quietly. Lucien's expression flickered. "Don't thank me yet, Miss Vale. We're just getting started." And then he turned and walked back into the ballroom, leaving Selene alone on the terrace with the city lights and the cold air and the terrifying realization that her life would never be the same, because Lucien Virelli had decided to fix what was broken. And men like him didn't do anything halfway. The next morning, Selene woke to 73 missed calls, 216 emails, and her face on the front page of the New York Times. Whistleblower vindicated. Selene Vale returns after corporate corruption exposed. She stared at the headline from her bed, her phone clutched in both hands, her heart racing. This was real. This was happening. And somewhere in a penthouse across the city, Lucien Virelli was probably drinking coffee and reading the same headlines, satisfied that his plan was working exactly as intended. But what Selene didn't know yet, what she couldn't possibly know, was that Lucien's plan went far deeper than redemption, and the price of visibility was higher than she'd ever imagined. The coffee in Selene's hand had gone cold an hour ago, but she kept holding the mug anyway because it gave her something to grip that wasn't her phone. Her phone had been ringing nonstop since 6 a.m. Reporters, headhunters, people she hadn't spoken to in 3 years suddenly acting like they'd never stopped being friends. Every call felt like a small violence, a reminder that visibility came with teeth. She sat at her kitchen table in the apartment she could barely afford, staring at her laptop screen where her inbox had exploded into chaos. Job offers buried beneath interview requests, buried beneath think pieces about corporate corruption and the cost of truth-telling. Someone had already written an op-ed calling her a hero. Someone else had written one calling her opportunist who'd waited 3 years to cash in on her victimhood. Both made her want to throw up. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. The apartment was too quiet, too small. The walls felt like they were closing in, and the morning light coming through the single window made everything look washed out and fragile. This place had been her refuge for 2 years, the place she'd rebuilt herself one small, invisible piece at a time. Now it felt like a cage she'd outgrown overnight. Her laptop chimed. New email. The sender name made her stomach drop. Lucien Virelli. Subject line? Lunch. Noon. Non-negotiable. No greeting, no pleasantries. Just an address for a restaurant Selene had never heard of, and a time that assumed she had nothing better to do than show up when summoned. Her jaw tightened. She typed back, busy. The response came in 30 seconds. No, you're not. See you at noon. Selene's finger hovered over the delete button. Then she slammed the laptop shut and went to take a shower hot enough to burn. The restaurant was the kind of place that didn't have a sign. Just a black door on a street in the financial district where every building looked like it cost more than small countries. Selene stood outside for a full minute, debating whether to turn around and go home, before a man in a suit appeared and opened the door without saying a word. Inside was all dark wood and low lighting, with tables spaced far enough apart that conversations couldn't bleed into each other. Money whispered here. Power ate quietly. The kind of place where deals were made and careers were ended between appetizers and dessert. Lucien sat at a corner table, already halfway through what looked like sparkling water. He glanced up when she approached, his expression unreadable. You're late, he said. You didn't give me much notice. I gave you 3 hours. And I have a life. Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe. Sit. Selene wanted to tell him to go to hell. Instead, she pulled out the chair across from him and sat down with more force than necessary. What do you want? Good afternoon to you, too. I'm serious. So am I. He leaned back, studying her. You look exhausted. I didn't sleep. I imagine not. He gestured to a waiter who materialized out of nowhere. She'll have the salmon, medium rare, and water, still, not sparkling. The waiter disappeared before Selene could protest. I can order for myself, she said tightly. You would have ordered a salad and spent the entire meal picking at it while pretending you're fine. This is more efficient. Lucien took a sip of his water. How many job offers have you received? I haven't counted. Liar. You've counted. What's the number? Selene's fingers curled against the white tablecloth. 43. Not bad for 16 hours. He didn't sound surprised. Any good ones? Define good. Worth your time, worth your talent, worth the fact that 3 days ago you were invisible and now you're headline news. The words landed like a punch. Selene forced herself to breathe evenly. Why does it matter to you? Because most of those offers are garbage. Consulting positions that sound impressive but give you no real authority. Advisory roles where you'll spend your time in meetings that accomplish nothing. They're offering you visibility, not power. And visibility without power is just performance. Maybe that's all I want. Lucien's expression hardened. You're lying again. You don't know what I want, don't I? He leaned forward, his voice dropping. You didn't walk into that gala last night because you wanted to be seen. You walked in because you wanted to matter again. Because for 3 years you've been invisible and it's been killing you piece by piece. So don't sit there and pretend you'd be satisfied with some bullshit advisory position where they wheel you out twice a year to talk about integrity. The accuracy of it felt like being flayed open. Celine's throat burned. What's your point? My point is you're about to make a mistake. You're going to take the first decent offer that comes along because you're scared this window will close. Because you're terrified that tomorrow everyone will forget about you again and you'll be right back where you started. His eyes locked onto hers. And I'm telling you not to. Why do you care? Because I didn't rebuild your reputation just to watch you waste it. The possessiveness in his tone made something in Celine's chest go hot and tight. You don't own me. I never said I did. You're acting like it. I'm acting like someone who knows what power looks like. And right now, Miss Vale, you're holding more of it than you realize. But if you settle for less than you deserve, that power disappears. And we both lose. What do you lose? Lucien was quiet for a moment. Then he said, the chance to see what you're actually capable of. The waiter returned with their food. Selene stared at the salmon on her plate without seeing it. Her mind was spinning, trying to figure out what game Lucien was playing, what he actually wanted from her. Because men like him didn't do charity. They didn't rebuild careers out of the goodness of their hearts. They invested. And investments expected returns. What do you want from me? She asked quietly. I want you to wait. For what? For the right opportunity. He cut into his steak with surgical precision. Something will come along in the next week. Something real. Something that will give you actual authority and resources and the ability to do the work you were doing before Marcus destroyed everything. And when it comes, you'll take it. How do you know something's coming? His smile was sharp. Because I'm making sure it does. Celine's stomach twisted. You're engineering this. I'm facilitating. That's not the same thing, isn't it? He took a bite, chewed, swallowed. The Virelli Foundation is launching a new initiative. International development programs focused on education and infrastructure in underserved regions. Large budget, significant autonomy, high visibility, and they need someone to run it. The implication settled over her like a weight. No. Why not? Because I'm not taking a job from you. It's not from me. It's from the foundation. I just happen to sit on the board. That's the same thing. Actually, it's not. The foundation operates independently. I don't control hiring decisions. I just make recommendations. He paused. Strong recommendations. Selene pushed her plate away. This is insane. This is strategy. This is you playing puppet master with my life. Would you prefer I let you flounder? Let you take some meaningless consulting gig that pays well but accomplishes nothing? Let you spend the next 5 years rebuilding credibility inch by inch when I can give you a platform that matters now? His voice went colder. Because that's the alternative, Miss Vale. You can do this the slow way, or you can let me help. Your choice. That's not a choice. That's an ultimatum. No. An ultimatum would be me threatening to take away everything I just gave you. I'm not doing that. I'm offering you something better. He leaned back. But if you're too proud to accept it, if you'd rather struggle alone because accepting help feels like weakness, fine. Walk away. I won't stop you. Celine's hands trembled in her lap. Every instinct screamed at her to get up and leave, to put as much distance as possible between herself and this man who seemed to think he could rewrite her life according to his will. But beneath the anger was something else. Something that whispered he was right. That the offers flooding her inbox were hollow. That she was about to settle for less because she was terrified of losing what little she'd gained. I need time, she said. You have 3 days. Then I need an answer. Why 3 days? Because the foundation board meets on Friday, and I need to know if I'm presenting your name or someone else's. The casual way he said it, like replacing her was a minor inconvenience, made Selene want to throw something. And if I say no, then someone else gets the position. Someone competent but unremarkable. Someone who'll do fine work that no one remembers. And you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you'd been brave enough to say yes. He stood, dropped cash on the table. 3 days, Miss Vale. Think carefully. Then he walked out, leaving Selene alone with cold salmon and a choice that felt like a trap, no matter which way she turned. That night, Celine's phone rang at midnight. She'd been lying in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind running in circles, when the sound cut through the silence like a knife. Unknown number again. She almost didn't answer, then something in her gut twisted, and she picked up. Hello? Silence. Then breathing. Heavy. Deliberate. Who is this? Celine's voice came out sharper than intended. More breathing. Then a voice. Male. Distorted. Like it was being run through a filter. You should have stayed gone. Her blood went cold. What? He can't protect you forever, and when he stops trying, we'll be waiting. The line went dead. Selene sat up, her heart hammering, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. She stared at the screen. Unknown number. No way to trace it. No way to know if it was real or some sick joke or... Her phone rang again. Same unknown number. This time she didn't answer, just sat there while it rang, and finally went to voicemail. 10 seconds later, a text came through. Unknown. Stop asking questions. Stop taking meetings. Disappear again, or we'll make you. Celine's breath came in short gasps. She stumbled out of bed, turned on every light in the apartment, checked the locks on her door twice. Her mind raced through possibilities. Who would threaten her? Why now? How they got her number? But nothing made sense. Unless Marcus wasn't as gone as Lucien claimed. Unless bringing her back into the light had put a target on her back. Unless Lucien had known this would happen and didn't care. Her phone rang again. Different number this time. She recognized it. Lucien. She answered without thinking. Someone just threatened me. A pause. Then his voice, sharp and focused. What did they say? She repeated the conversation, her words tumbling over each other. When she finished, silence stretched across the line. Are you home? He asked finally. Yes. Stay there. I'm sending security. I don't need... You do. They'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't open the door for anyone else. Don't answer any more calls. And Miss Vale? His voice dropped. This doesn't change the timeline. I still need your answer by Friday. The audacity of it, the fact that someone had just threatened her life and he was still pushing his agenda, made fury bloom hot in Celine's chest. Are you serious right now? Completely. Because whoever made that call, they're scared, which means we're getting close to something they want to stay buried, and backing down now would be the worst thing you could do. Or maybe it would keep me alive. You think disappearing will keep you safe? You think Marcus, or whoever's behind this, will just forget about you if you go back to being nobody? His laugh was bitter. That's not how this works, Miss Vale. You're a loose end now. You're a threat. And the only way to protect yourself is to become too visible, too important, too connected to touch. Which means taking the position, building power, making yourself untouchable. Celine's mind reeled. This is insane. This is survival. And you're smart enough to know the difference. He paused. Security will be there soon. Try to get some sleep. He hung up before she could respond. Selene stood in her too-bright apartment, her phone clutched in her hand, and felt the walls closing in. Because Lucien was right. Going back wasn't an option. Hiding wasn't an option. The only way through this was forward, into territory she didn't understand, controlled by a man she didn't trust, toward a future that felt more like a cliff edge than a path. But what choice did she have? 20 minutes later, a knock came at her door. She checked the peephole. 2 men in dark suits, professional and blank-faced, the kind of security money bought. She let them in because she didn't know what else to do. They swept the apartment without speaking, checked windows and locks, then positioned themselves, one by the door, one by the window. Sentinels in her small space that suddenly felt even smaller. Mr. Virelli wants you to know you're safe, one of them said. His voice was flat, professional. We'll be here until morning. Selene nodded because words felt impossible. She went back to her bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of her bed with her head in her hands. Somewhere across the city, Lucien was probably sleeping soundly in his penthouse, satisfied that his plan was moving forward exactly as intended. And Selene was left holding the pieces of a life that had been broken and badly repaired. wondering if accepting his help meant giving him permission to break it all over again. The next 3 days passed in a blur of paranoia and pressure. The security team stayed. More threats came. Texts, voicemails, messages slipped under her door with words cut from newspapers like something out of a bad thriller. Walk away. Forget what you know. Last warning. Selene stopped reading them after the 5th one. The job offers kept coming too. Positions at think tanks and NGOs and consulting firms that sounded impressive until you read the fine print and realized they were offering her a title with no teeth. Lucien had been right about that. They wanted her name, her story, her face in their brochures. But they didn't want her authority. Didn't want her making real decisions or controlling real resources. They wanted performance, not power. On Thursday night, Selene sat in her apartment with the security team stationed outside and pulled up the details Lucien had sent about the Virelli Foundation position. Director of International Programs, budget in the tens of millions, projects across 12 countries, complete operational autonomy, reporting directly to the board with minimal oversight. It was everything she'd wanted before Marcus destroyed her career. Everything she'd spent 3 years convincing herself she'd never have again. And it was being offered by a man who'd upended her life in 72 hours and seemed to think that gave him the right to dictate her future. Her phone buzzed. Text from Lucien. Have you decided? She stared at the message, typed and deleted 3 different responses. Finally settled on, I need to meet with you. In person. Tomorrow. 9 a.m. My office. No negotiation. No flexibility. Just another command disguised as an offer. Selene threw her phone across the room. It hit the wall with a satisfying crack but didn't break. Like everything else in her life right now, damaged but still functional. Lucien's office occupied the top floor of a building that stabbed into the sky like a threat. All glass and steel and views that made you understand exactly how far you could fall. Selene rode the elevator up with one of the security guards who'd been shadowing her for 3 days. Her stomach churning with every floor they climbed. The elevator doors opened directly into a reception area that looked like it belonged in a museum. Modern art on the walls, furniture that probably cost more than her entire apartment, a receptionist who looked at Selene like she was something tracked in on someone's shoe. Miss Vale, the receptionist said without warmth, Mr. Virelli is expecting you. She was led down a hallway lined with windows that overlooked the city. Manhattan spread out below like a game board, and Selene wondered how many pieces Lucien controlled from up here, how many lives he moved around without them knowing. The door to his office was open. She stepped inside. The space was massive. Corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 sides. Minimal furniture. A desk that looked carved from a single piece of black marble. Leather chairs. A conference table that could seat 12. Everything precise. Everything controlled. Nothing that suggested a human being actually worked here. Lucien stood by the window, his back to her, phone pressed to his ear. He gestured for her to sit without turning around. Selene stayed standing. I don't care what the board thinks, he was saying into the phone. His voice was ice. They'll approve it because I'm telling them to approve it. And if they don't, remind them who built this company. Yes, I'm aware of the optics. No, I'm not concerned. Because I said so. That's reason enough. He hung up without saying goodbye. Then he turned to face her. You're early, he said. You said 9, it's 9. I meant 9:15. No one arrives exactly on time. I'm not playing games, Lucy. His eyebrow lifted at her use of his first name. No? Then why are you here? Because you demanded I come. I suggested. You chose to show up. There's a difference. He moved to his desk, leaned against it with his arms crossed. Have you made a decision? Selene's jaw tightened. I have questions first. Of course you do. Who's threatening me? I don't know yet, but I'm working on it. That's not good enough. It's the truth. Marcus disappeared 3 years ago. We've been searching, but he covered his tracks well. These threats could be him, could be people he worked with, could be someone else entirely who doesn't want the corruption investigation reopened. He paused. But it doesn't change the fundamentals. You're exposed now. The only way to protect yourself is to become too important to threaten. By taking a position at your foundation. By taking a position that gives you resources, connections, and visibility. Yes. And what do you get? Lucien's expression shifted. Something flickered behind his eyes, something that looked almost like frustration. Why does everyone keep asking me that? Because you're Lucien Virelli. You don't do charity. You don't rebuild careers out of goodness. So what's the angle? What are you really getting out of this? He pushed off the desk, closed the distance between them in 3 strides, stood close enough that Selene had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes, close enough that she could see the muscle ticking in his jaw. You want the truth? His voice was low, dangerous. Fine, I'm tired of mediocrity. I'm tired of watching talented people get destroyed by corrupt systems while incompetent assholes fail upward. I'm tired of foundations that spend millions accomplishing nothing because the people running them care more about photo ops than impact. He paused. And 3 years ago, I watched my cousin destroy someone brilliant because he needed a scapegoat, and I did nothing. I knew Marcus was wrong. I knew you were right. And I let it happen because fixing it would have been inconvenient. The admission hung between them like smoke. Selene's breath caught. Why? Because I was building an empire. Because I had priorities. Because one person's career didn't matter compared to the bigger picture. His eyes were dark, unreadable. I was wrong. And I don't like being wrong, so I'm fixing it. That's not a reason. That's guilt. Maybe guilt is reason enough. They stood there inches apart, and Selene felt something shift in the air between them. Something charged. Something that made her pulse kick up and her skin feel too tight. I don't trust you, she said quietly. Good. You shouldn't. Then why should I work for you? Because you don't have better options. Because the foundation position is real. Because you know I'm right about the threats and the timing and what you need to do to survive this. He paused. And because somewhere under all that anger and fear, you want this. You want the work. You want the impact. You want to matter again. The accuracy of it made her want to scream, or cry, or both. I'm not your redemption project, Selene said. I never said you were. You're treating me like one. I'm treating you like someone with potential that's being wasted. There's a difference. He stepped back, giving her space. Take the position or don't, but decide now. The board meets in 2 hours and I need to know if I'm presenting your name. Selene's mind raced. Every logical part of her brain screamed to walk away, to find another path, to refuse to be controlled by a man who'd admitted he let her career burn because it was convenient. But beneath the logic was something rawer, hunger, ambition, the desperate, vicious need to matter again, and the terrifying knowledge that Lucien was offering her the only path forward that didn't end with her disappearing into irrelevance. Fine, she heard herself say. I'll take it. Lucien's expression didn't change. Say it clearly. I'll take the position, Director of International Programs, Virelli Foundation. Good. He moved to his desk, pulled out a folder, held it out to her. Contract. Review it with a lawyer. Start date is Monday. Selene took the folder with shaking hands. That's 4 days from now. You have a problem with that. I have a life to rearrange. No, you don't. You have an apartment and some furniture. Everything else can be handled. He checked his watch. Security will continue until we identify who's threatening you. You'll have an office on the 15th floor, support staff, access to foundation resources, and full autonomy to build your programs however you see fit. What's the catch? No catch, just results. The board expects impact, real, measurable impact. Lives changed, systems improved, the kind of work that makes headlines for the right reasons. His eyes locked onto hers. Can you do that? Selene's throat was tight. Yes. Then we're done here. He turned back to the window, dismissing her. My assistant will send you onboarding information. Welcome to the Foundation, Miss Vale. She stood there for a moment, the folder heavy in her hands, feeling like she'd just signed something more binding than a contract, like she'd signed herself over to a man who saw her as a chess piece, a valuable one, maybe, but a piece nonetheless. Lucien, she said. He glanced back. If you're lying to me, if this is some kind of game, if I find out you're using me, but you'll what? His smile was sharp. You'll quit? Walk away? Go back to being nobody? He shook his head. You won't, because you want this too much, because you need this too much. And we both know it. The truth of it hit like a slap. Selene turned and walked out before he could see how badly her hands were shaking. The elevator ride down felt like falling. By the time Selene reached the lobby, her chest was tight, and her vision was blurred, and she couldn't tell if she was about to cry or scream or laugh hysterically. She'd just agreed to work for a man who terrified her, who controlled her, who looked at her like she was a problem to be solved rather than a person to be known. But she'd also just agreed to the job she'd spent 3 years dreaming about. The work that mattered, the chance to matter. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Bad choice. Last warning. Selene stared at the message, then she deleted it without responding and walked out into the morning light. Because Lucien had been right about one thing. The only way through this was forward. Even if forward felt like walking into a trap she couldn't see but knew was waiting. Even if forward meant trusting a man who'd already admitted he'd let her burn once before. Even if forward meant giving up the safety of invisibility for the danger of being seen. She'd made her choice, and now she'd have to live with it. That night, Selene sat in her apartment with the contract spread across her coffee table and a glass of wine she wasn't drinking. The security team was outside. The threats had stopped after she'd accepted the position, which either meant someone was watching her closely enough to know her decisions in real time, or Lucien had been right about visibility being protection. Neither option was comforting. She read through the contract 3 times. It was clean, no hidden clauses, no traps that she could find. Just a straightforward employment agreement that gave her exactly what Lucien had promised: authority, resources, autonomy. Too clean, too perfect. Men like Lucien Virelli didn't make deals that were this one-sided. Her phone rang. Not unknown this time. A name she recognized from her past life before everything fell apart. Dr. Sarah Chen, former colleague, someone who'd actually stayed in touch during the worst of it. Selene answered. Sarah? Oh my God, Selene, I've been trying to reach you for 3 days. Sarah's voice was tight, urgent. Are you okay? It's complicated. Why? Because I've been hearing things. About you and Lucien Virelli. About the foundation position. And I need to tell you something. Selene's stomach dropped. What? Not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? There's a coffee shop on... Sarah, just tell me. A pause, then... Lucien Virelli didn't just let your career burn 3 years ago. He helped Marcus do it. The room tilted. What are you talking about? Selene's voice came out strangled. I didn't know until recently. I've been doing consulting work for one of the firms that investigated Virelli Corporation after you were fired. I saw documents, emails. Marcus didn't act alone. Lucien Stitt and Ian knew about the fraud. He knew Marcus was setting you up, and he... Sarah's voice cracked. He approved it, signed off on your termination, made sure the narrative blamed you instead of looking deeper into the company. Selene couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The world narrowed to Sarah's voice on the other end of the line, saying words that didn't make sense but felt like truth. That's not possible, she whispered. I have proof. I can show you. But Selene, you need to be careful. Whatever Lucien's doing now, whatever he's offering you, it's not guilt. It's not redemption. It's something else. And I don't think you're safe. The line went quiet except for Selene's ragged breathing. Meet me tomorrow, Sarah said. 9 a.m., the coffee shop on 5th and 42nd. I'll bring everything I have, and then you can decide what to do. Okay, Selene managed. And Selene, don't tell anyone you're meeting me, especially not Lucien. Promise me. I promise. Sarah hung up. Selene sat in the silence of her apartment, the contract mocking her from the coffee table, and felt everything she'd been building for the past week crack straight down the middle. Because if Sarah was telling the truth, if Lucien had been part of destroying her career, if he'd known all along and helped Marcus do it, then everything that had happened in the past 72 hours was a lie, and the man offering to save her was the same man who'd helped destroy her in the first place. Her phone buzzed. Text from Lucien. Board approved your appointment. Congratulations, Director Vale. See you Monday. Selene stared at the message until the screen went dark. Then she did something she hadn't done in 3 years. She locked herself in her bathroom, turned on the shower to cover the sound, and cried until she had nothing left. Because she'd just agreed to work for a man who might be her savior or her executioner, and she wouldn't know which until it was too late to matter. The coffee shop smelled like burnt beans and desperation. Selene sat in the back corner with her hands wrapped around a cup she hadn't touched, watching the door like it might explode. Every person who walked in made her pulse spike. Every sound, chairs scraping, espresso machines hissing, conversations bleeding together, felt too loud, too close, too much. Sarah was late. 15 minutes late. Selene checked her phone for the fourth time. No messages, no missed calls, just the screen glowing back at her with nothing useful. The security team Lucien had assigned was parked outside in a black SUV. She told them she was meeting a friend for coffee. They hadn't asked questions, hadn't cared, just took up position where they could watch the entrance and make sure no one tried to hurt her. But what if the person who wanted to hurt her was the one paying them? The thought made her stomach turn. She pushed the coffee away before she could be sick. 20 minutes late. Selene pulled out her phone again, typed a message to Sarah. "Where are you?" The text wouldn't send, just hung there with a spinning icon that mocked her. She tried calling, straight to voicemail. Something was wrong. Selene's hands started shaking. She shoved them under the table, pressed her palms against her thighs, tried to breathe through the panic clawing up her throat. Maybe Sarah got stuck in traffic. Maybe her phone died. Maybe she was running late and there was a perfectly reasonable explanation that didn't involve the door opened. Not Sarah. A man. Tall, mid-40s, suit that cost more than most people's cars. He scanned the coffee shop with the kind of efficiency that came from training, and when his eyes found Selene, they stopped. He walked straight to her table. "Miss Vale." It wasn't a question. Selene's voice came out thin. "Who are you?" "James Garrett. I work for Mr. Virelli." He pulled out the chair across from her without asking, sat down like he owned the space. "He'd like to see you." "I'm busy." "No, you're not. You're waiting for Dr. Sarah Chen, who isn't coming." The blood drained from Selene's face. "How do you shh? Mr. Virelli knows a lot of things, Miss Vale, including who you talk to, who you trust, and who's been feeding you information that isn't accurate." Garrett's expression was flat, professional. "Dr. Chen won't be joining you this morning, but Mr. Virelli would very much like to discuss what she told you last night." Selene's mind raced. They'd been listening. They'd heard the phone call. They knew Sarah had evidence, knew she'd promised to bring it, knew Selene was here to see proof that Lucien had destroyed her career deliberately, and now Sarah wasn't coming. "Where is she?" Selene's voice cracked. "Safe. Unharmed. Just detained." Garrett stood. "The car is outside. Mr. Virelli is waiting." "And if I refuse?" "Then you'll spend the rest of the day wondering what happened to Dr. Chen. Wondering if the threats you've been receiving were real or manufactured. Wondering if the man who rebuilt your career in 72 hours can destroy it just as fast." He adjusted his cufflinks. "Or you can come with me, get answers, and make an informed decision about your future. Your choice." It wasn't a choice. They both knew it. Selene stood on legs that felt like water, followed Garrett through the coffee shop while every customer carefully didn't look at them. Out onto the street where the morning sun was too bright and the city was too loud and everything felt wrong. The black SUV with Lucien's security team was gone. In its place was a different car, sleek, black, windows tinted dark enough that you couldn't see inside. Garrett opened the back door. "After you." Selene hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to scream, to do anything except get in that car. But Sarah was missing, and Lucien had answers. She climbed in. The interior was leather and silence. Garrett got in beside her. The driver pulled away from the curb without a word, and Selene watched the coffee shop disappear in the side mirror like an escape route she'd never see again. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Mr. Virelli's residence. I thought we were going to his office." "Mr. Virelli prefers privacy for certain conversations." Garrett's tone was neutral, empty. "This is one of them." They drove in silence. Selene's phone buzzed in her pocket, probably the security team wondering where she'd gone, but Garrett's hand moved to his jacket in a way that suggested she shouldn't answer it. She left it alone. 20 minutes later, the car pulled into an underground garage beneath a building Selene recognized from photographs. Exclusive. Historic. The kind of place where penthouses sold for amounts that made headlines. The driver parked in a spot marked private. Garrett got out, waited for Selene to follow. They took an elevator that required a key card, rode it in silence to the top floor. The doors opened directly into an apartment that made Lucien's office look modest. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Furniture that belonged in architectural magazines. Art on the walls that was probably worth more than Selene would make in a lifetime. Everything pristine, everything controlled, everything designed to remind you exactly how much power lived here. Lucien stood by the windows with his back to them, phone pressed to his ear. He was dressed casually, dark jeans, white shirt rolled to his elbows, and somehow that made him more intimidating, not less. Like he didn't need the armor of a suit to be dangerous. "I don't care what the lawyers say," he was saying. "Make it happen. Because I'm telling you to." "No, that's final." He hung up, turned around. His eyes found Selene, and something in his expression shifted. "Thank you, Garrett. That'll be all." Garrett nodded and disappeared into another room, leaving Selene alone with the man who'd either saved her or destroyed her. She still wasn't sure which. "Coffee?" Lucien asked. "Where's Sarah?" "Safe, as Garrett told you." "I want to see her." "No, you don't. You want answers, so let's start there." He moved to a bar cart, poured himself something amber. Didn't offer her anything. "Dr. Chen contacted you last night and told you I helped Marcus frame you 3 years ago. That I knew about the fraud, that I approved your termination, that I deliberately destroyed your career." It wasn't a question, but Selene answered anyway. "Yes." "And you believed her?" "She said she had proof." "She doesn't." "How do you know?" Because if she had proof, she would have released it already. Gone to the press. Made noise. She wouldn't have asked you to meet her in a coffee shop at 9 in the morning like some kind of spy thriller. He took a sip of his drink. "She was lying to you, Miss Vale, and you were about to fall for it." Selene's hands clenched into fists. "Why would she lie?" "Because someone paid her to. Someone who wants you to distrust me. Someone who benefits from you walking away from the foundation position before you even start." He set his glass down with controlled precision. "Marcus, probably. Or whoever's working with him." "That doesn't make sense, doesn't it?" Lucien moved closer. "You expose corruption that implicates powerful people. You disappear for 3 years. Then suddenly you're back, high profile, about to take a position that gives you resources and visibility. Of course they're scared. Of course they want to stop you. And the easiest way to stop you is to make you distrust the one person who's actually helping you." The logic was sound, too sound. And that's what made Selene's stomach twist. Because everything Lucien said made sense. But so did everything Sarah had said, and she couldn't tell which truth was real anymore. "Where is Sarah?" she asked again. "My security team picked her up this morning, before she could meet you, before she could show you whatever fabricated evidence she'd been paid to produce." His eyes were dark, unreadable. "She's being held at a secure location until we can verify who hired her and what they wanted her to tell you." "That's kidnapping. That's protection. For both of you." He leaned against the window, arms crossed. "If she'd met with you this morning, if she'd shown you fake documents, if you'd believed her and walked away from the foundation, what do you think would have happened next? You'd be alone, vulnerable. No security, no resources, no protection. And whoever's threatening you would have a clear shot." Selene's mind spun. "You're saying you kidnapped my friend to protect me. I'm saying I prevented you from making a catastrophic mistake based on disinformation. That's not your decision to make. Actually, it is, because you work for me now. Because your safety is my responsibility, and because—" He stopped. Something flickered across his face too fast to read. "Because I'm not letting them destroy you again." The intensity in his voice made Selene's breath catch. She stared at him, trying to read the expression in his eyes, trying to figure out if this was manipulation or something else entirely. "I don't know what to believe anymore," she said quietly. "Then believe this." Lucien pushed off the window, walked to a desk in the corner, pulled out a folder, held it out to her. "Everything I told you about Marcus was true. Here's the proof. Bank records showing the transfers, flight manifests showing his departure to the Cayman Islands, communications between him and the executives who helped cover it up. All of it documented, all of it real." Selene took the folder with shaking hands, opened it, started reading. The documents were thorough, detailed. Bank accounts in Marcus's name routing money through shell companies. Emails discussing how to handle the Vale situation. Meeting notes about terminating her employment and ensuring the investigation died with her departure. But nowhere in any of it did Lucien's name appear. She looked up. This doesn't prove you weren't involved. No, it proves I wasn't. Look at the dates, the communications. Marcus operated independently, built his fraud scheme without my knowledge. And by the time I found out, you were already gone. He paused. I told you the truth at the gala. I knew you were right. I knew Marcus was wrong, but I didn't know the full scope until it was too late to fix it. Until now. Until now. Selene's hands trembled around the folder. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that the man standing in front of her was exactly what he claimed. Someone trying to correct a past mistake, someone offering her a real chance at redemption. But she'd spent 3 years learning that powerful men didn't do anything without a reason. Why does it matter so much to you? She asked. Why go through all this trouble? Why rebuild my career? Why protect me from threats? Why kidnap my friend to keep me from hearing information that might not even be true? Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, because I was wrong 3 years ago. Because I should have investigated Marcus sooner. Because your career shouldn't have been collateral damage in someone else's crime. He moved closer. Close enough that she could see the tension in his jaw. And because watching talented people get destroyed by corrupt systems makes me angry. Watching you specifically get destroyed made me... He stopped. Didn't finish the sentence. But something in his expression cracked open just enough for Selene to see something underneath. Something that looked almost like guilt. Almost like regret. Almost like something more dangerous than either. Made you what? She whispered. Lucien's eyes locked onto hers. Made me realize I don't like being the kind of man who does nothing. The words hung between them like a confession. Selene's throat was tight. I still don't trust you. I know, but I don't know who else to trust either. I know that too. They stood there in the silence of his apartment, the city sprawling below them, and Selene felt the ground shift beneath her feet, because she was realizing something terrifying. It didn't matter if Lucien was telling the truth or lying. It didn't matter if Sarah's evidence was real or fabricated. What mattered was that she'd already made her choice. She'd signed the contract, accepted the position, stepped into Lucien's world. And now there was no way out that didn't end with her losing everything again. I want to see Sarah, she said finally. Not yet. That wasn't a request. And this isn't a negotiation. Lucien's voice went colder. Dr. Chen stays where she is until I'm satisfied she's not a threat to you. Then she'll be released unharmed with a very clear understanding of what happens if she contacts you again. You can't just... I can. I am. And you're going to let me because deep down, Miss Vale, you know I'm right. You know someone's trying to manipulate you. And you know that trusting the wrong person right now could get you killed. The casual certainty in his tone made fury bloom hot in Selene's chest. You're doing exactly what Marcus did. Controlling my life, is making decisions for me, deciding what I'm allowed to know and who I'm allowed to see. No, Marcus destroyed you to save himself. I'm protecting you to save you from your own doubts. He moved even closer, his voice dropping. There's a difference, Miss Vale, and you're smart enough to know it. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, it looks the same. Then you're not looking close enough. They were inches apart now. Close enough that Selene could feel the heat coming off him. Close enough that her pulse kicked up for reasons that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the dangerous current running between them. She should step back. Should put distance between herself and this man who terrified and fascinated her in equal measure. She didn't move. What do you want from me? Her voice came out rough. Really, not the rehearsed answer, not the story about guilt and redemption and fixing past mistakes. What do you actually want? Lucien's jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, I want to see what you're capable of when no one's holding you back. Why? Because I think you're extraordinary. And I think the world has been deprived of your talent for 3 years because someone decided you were inconvenient. His eyes burned into hers. And I want to see what happens when you're not. The honesty of it hit like a physical blow. Not because it was kind, but because it was possessive. Because he was looking at her like she was a project, an investment, something to cultivate and control and shape according to his vision. And the most terrifying part was that some small, vicious piece of Selene wanted him to. "I should go," she whispered. "You should stay." "Why?" "Because you don't have anywhere else to be. Because your security team thinks you're still at the coffee shop. Because Sarah's safe and the threats have stopped, and for the first time in 3 years, you're not running." He paused. "And because I think you're tired of running." He was right. Damn him, he was right. Celine's shoulders sagged. The fight drained out of her all at once, leaving her hollow and exhausted and so tired of trying to figure out who was lying and who was telling the truth. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you start Monday as planned. You build your programs. You do the work you've been dreaming about for 3 years. And I make sure no one gets in your way. And Sarah will be released tomorrow with a warning. No harm, no charges. Just a very clear understanding that interfering with my employees has consequences." Selene flinched at the word. Employees. That's all she was to him. That's all she'd ever be. "I want to go home," she said. Lucien studied her for a moment. Then he pulled out his phone, sent a text. "Garrett will take you. Security team will be waiting when you arrive." "And Miss Vale?" His voice softened just slightly. "I know you don't trust me yet, but I'm asking you to try. Because we're on the same side here, even if it doesn't feel like it." Selene didn't answer, just turned and walked toward the elevator before she could change her mind, before she could ask the questions burning in her chest, before she could do something stupid like believe him. Garrett appeared as if summoned, led her back to the elevator, back to the car, back through the city to her apartment where the security team was indeed waiting, looking mildly confused about where she'd been. She didn't explain, just locked herself in her apartment and stood in the shower until the water ran cold. Then she pulled out her phone and did the one thing she'd been avoiding. She called the number Sarah had used last night. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then someone answered, but it wasn't Sarah. "Miss Vale?" The voice was male, distorted. The same one from the threatening calls. "You should have listened. You should have walked away. Now it's too late." Selene's blood turned to ice. "Who is this?" "Someone who's been watching you very carefully. Someone who knows you met with Virelli this morning. Someone who knows he's lying to you about everything." The voice paused. "Dr. Chen was telling the truth. Lucien Virelli destroyed your career deliberately, and now he's bringing you back because he needs you for something worse." "I don't believe you." "You don't have to believe me. You just have to survive long enough to see the proof, which," the voice went colder, "might be difficult, because Virelli doesn't let loose ends survive, and you, Miss Vale, are the loosest end he's ever had." The line went dead. Selene stood in her apartment, phone clutched in her hand, and felt the walls closing in. Because someone was lying. Either Lucien was lying about Marcus, about the fraud, about everything, and she just signed herself over to the man who destroyed her career. Or Sarah was lying, the threats were real, and someone was trying to manipulate her into walking away from the only chance she had at rebuilding her life. And she had no way to know which was true. Her phone buzzed. Text from Lucien. "Security reported your home safe." "Good. Get some rest. Monday's going to be intense." Selene stared at the message. Then she opened her laptop and started searching. Bank records. Flight manifests. Communications. Everything Lucien had shown her in that folder. She needed to verify it. Needed to know if what he'd given her was real or fabricated. Needed to know if she'd just made a deal with her savior or her executioner. 3 hours later, she'd found nothing. The documents checked out. The bank accounts existed. The transfers had happened exactly as Lucien and claimed. Marcus Virelli had stolen $40 million and disappeared, and the paper trail supported every word Lucien had told her. But something still felt wrong. Selene pulled up news articles from 3 years ago. Searched for coverage of her termination, of the scandal, of the investigation that had died the moment she was fired. There, an article from the Wall Street Journal dated 2 weeks after her departure. Small piece. Buried in the business section, but the details made her breath catch. Virelli Corporation settles internal investigation without charges. The investigation had been closed, no charges filed, no further inquiry. The company had paid a minor fine and moved on. And the executive quoted in the article explaining why the investigation ended? Lucien Virelli. After thorough review, we determined that the irregularities were the result of a single employee's misconduct. That employee has been terminated, and we've implemented additional oversight to prevent similar incidents. We consider the matter resolved. The single employee. That was her. He'd called her misconduct, called her the problem, and then he'd closed the investigation. Selene's hands shook as she kept reading. Found another article, then another, all saying the same thing. Lucien Virelli had personally overseen the internal investigation, had personally decided the scope, had personally determined that Selene Vale was the sole person responsible, and then he'd ended it. The folder he'd shown her this morning, all those documents proving Marcus's guilt, none of them had been part of the original investigation. None of them had existed 3 years ago, which meant Lucien had found them later, after she was gone, after her career was destroyed, after it was too late to matter, or he'd always known they existed and chosen not to use them, chosen to let her burn instead. Selene's vision blurred. Her chest felt too tight. She couldn't breathe. Sarah had been telling the truth. Lucien had helped Marcus destroy her. Maybe not actively, maybe not deliberately, but he'd been the one to close the investigation, the one to call her misconduct, the one to make sure no one looked deeper. And now he was bringing her back because why? Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. What? You found it. The distorted voice from before. You found the articles. Now you know the truth. Who are you? Selene's voice cracked. Someone who wants to help you before it's too late, before Virelli finishes what he started. A pause. Meet me. Tomorrow night, 10 p.m. The address will be texted to you. Come alone. Bring everything Virelli gave you, and I'll show you why he really brought you back. Why should I trust you? Because I'm the only person who's told you the truth since this started. And because if you don't meet me, you won't survive the next 2 weeks. The voice softened just slightly. He's using you, Miss Vale, for something bigger than you understand. And when he's done, you'll disappear permanently this time. The line went dead. Selene sat in the darkness of her apartment, the laptop screen glowing in front of her, and felt everything she'd been building collapse. Because Lucien had lied. He'd called her misconduct, closed the investigation, made sure she took the fall alone. And now he was bringing her back, giving her power and resources and protection, and she still didn't know why. But she was going to find out, even if it killed her. Her phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. Address, Warehouse District, Pier 19, 10 p.m. tomorrow. Come alone or don't come at all. Selene stared at the message. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap, that whoever was texting her wanted to hurt her, that meeting them alone in a warehouse district at night was the worst decision she could possibly make. But staying in the dark felt worse. She needed answers, real answers, not the sanitized version Lucien fed her. Not the controlled narrative he'd constructed. The truth. Whatever that cost. She typed back, "I'll be there." Then she closed the laptop, turned off all the lights, and sat in the darkness of her apartment with the security team outside, and the city humming below, and the terrible knowledge that she'd just agreed to walk into something she might not walk out of. Because that's what survival looked like now. Not safety, not certainty, just the willingness to step into the darkness and see what was waiting there. Even if it destroyed her, even if the person waiting was worse than Lucien, even if the truth was more dangerous than any lie she'd been told. Monday was in 3 days. 3 days to figure out who was lying and who was telling the truth. 3 days to decide if she was walking into her redemption or her grave. 3 days to become someone she'd never been before. Someone willing to fight back. Someone willing to burn everything down if that's what survival required. Someone who wouldn't be destroyed quietly ever again. Selene stood, walked to her closet, and pulled out the box she'd kept hidden for 3 years. The box with copies of every document she'd found before Marcus had her fired, every piece of evidence she'd collected, every transaction she'd flagged. She'd kept them because throwing them away felt like admitting defeat. Now she was glad she had, because whatever happened tomorrow night, she was going in armed, not with weapons, but with the truth she'd almost died for once already. And this time, she wasn't going down alone. The day before the meeting passed like a countdown to something Selene couldn't name. She went through the motions, answered emails, reviewed the foundation contract again, pretended to sleep when night came, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. In that warehouse on Pier 19. In the darkness waiting for her. In the truth she was either about to discover or die trying to find. By Sunday evening, her nerves were shredded. The security team outside her apartment changed shifts at 6. She watched through the window as one black SUV replaced another, the guards trading places with military precision. They were good, professional, loyal to Lucien, which meant she couldn't let them follow her tonight. At 9:30, Selene grabbed her jacket and the folder containing every document she'd kept from 3 years ago. Shoved them into a backpack, checked her phone one more time. No messages from Lucien, nothing from Sarah, just the address glowing on her screen like a dare. She took the fire escape. It was stupid, reckless, the kind of thing that got people killed in movies. But the front door meant walking past the security team, and they'd either stop her or follow her, and neither option worked. So she climbed out her bedroom window onto the metal grating that clung to the side of the building like a skeleton, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped the backpack twice. The night air was cold. The drop was 7 stories, and every step down made the metal creak in ways that sounded like screaming. By the time she reached the alley behind her building, her heart was hammering so hard she could feel it in her teeth. She didn't look back, didn't check if anyone had noticed, just pulled up her hood and walked. The subway took 40 minutes. She changed trains twice, watching the reflections in the windows to see if anyone followed. No one did. Or if they did, they were better at hiding than she was at looking. The warehouse district smelled like rust and river water. Empty buildings loomed on either side of streets that hadn't seen maintenance in decades. Graffiti covered everything. Broken windows stared down like dead eyes. This was the part of the city money forgot. The place where things went to rot quietly while the rest of Manhattan pretended it didn't exist. Pier 19 sat at the end of a street that dead-ended at the water. The warehouse was massive, all corrugated metal and structural decay, with a single door hanging half open like a broken jaw. No lights, no signs of life, just darkness and the sound of water lapping against old wood. Selene checked her phone. 9:58. She was early, or she was late and everyone was already dead inside. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She shoved them in her pockets and walked toward the door because standing still felt like giving up. The interior of the warehouse was worse than the outside. Concrete floors cracked and stained. Metal beams overhead hung at angles that suggested structural failure was more a question of when than if. Moonlight filtered through holes in the roof, casting everything in silver and shadow. The air tasted like chemicals and rot. "Hello?" Selene's voice echoed. Came back to her sounding small and scared. No answer. She walked deeper into the space, her footsteps too loud against the concrete. Every shadow looked like a person. Every sound made her jump. The backpack felt heavy on her shoulders, not from weight, but from what it represented. 3 years of evidence, 3 years of truth no one had wanted to hear. "You came!" Selene spun. The voice came from behind her, but when she turned, there was no one there. "Show yourself," she said. Tried to sound brave. Failed. A figure stepped out from behind a support beam. Male, average height, face covered by a mask. Not the theatrical kind, just a black balaclava that hid everything except eyes that reflected the moonlight like a predator's. "Smart of you to come alone," the figure said. The voice was different now. No distortion, no filter. Just raw and human and somehow more terrifying for it. "Stupid of you to come at all." Selene's throat was dry. "You said you had proof, that Lucien was lying." "I have proof of a lot of things, Miss Vale. The question is whether you're ready to see it." The figure moved closer. Not threatening, just closing distance. "Because once you know the truth, you can't unknow it. And the truth is going to destroy everything you thought you understood. I'm here. Show me." "Not yet." The figure tilted his head. "First, you need to understand something. Lucien Virelli didn't bring you back because he felt guilty. He didn't rebuild your career because he wanted to fix a mistake. He brought you back because he needs you." "For what?" "To take the fall. Again." The words landed like a punch. Selene took a step back. That doesn't make sense. Why would he? Because the foundation you just agreed to run? It's not what you think. The international development programs, the humanitarian work, the education initiatives, they're real. But they're also cover. The figure pulled something from his jacket, a USB drive, held it out. Everything's on here, financial records, communications. Proof that the Virelli Foundation has been laundering money for the past 5 years. Millions of dollars moving through those humanitarian programs into accounts that have nothing to do with charity. Selene's stomach dropped. You're lying. Am I? Then why did Marcus really steal that 40 million? Why did he really frame you? The figure stepped closer. Because he found out what Lucien was doing. He tried to blackmail his cousin, and when that didn't work, he took the money and ran. But he needed a scapegoat first, someone smart enough to find evidence of fraud, but not smart enough to see the bigger picture. No. Selene's voice cracked. Lucien showed me documents, proved Marcus was guilty. Marcus is guilty of theft, of fraud, of framing you. But so is Lucien. And now Lucien's bringing you back, putting you in charge of the very programs he's using to launder money, and when the feds finally catch on, the figure's voice went colder. You'll be the one they arrest. Again. Only this time, it won't be your career that gets destroyed. It'll be your life. The warehouse spun. Selene pressed her hand against a support beam to steady herself. Why should I believe you? Because I'm the only person who's telling you the truth without trying to control you. The figure shook the USB drive. Take it. Look at what's on it. Then decide if you want to walk into Lucien's trap tomorrow or disappear before it's too late. Selene stared at the drive. Every instinct screamed not to touch it. Not to believe this masked stranger in a warehouse at night who could be anyone, could want anything, could be trying to destroy her even more thoroughly than she'd already been destroyed. But what if he was right? What if everything Lucien had told her was a lie wrapped in just enough truth to make it believable? What if she was about to become a scapegoat again? Only this time the consequences would be prison instead of unemployment. She reached for the USB drive. The warehouse lights exploded on all at once, flooding the space with harsh white that made her eyes scream. Selene threw up her hand, blinded, stumbling backward. Step away from her, now! Lucien's voice, cold and sharp and coming from everywhere at once. Selene's vision adjusted enough to see him standing near the entrance with 6 men in tactical gear fanning out behind him. Not the security team from her apartment. These were different, harder, the kind of people who hurt people for a living. The masked figure didn't move, just stood there holding the USB drive like it was a grenade with the pin already pulled. Virelli, right on time. I said step away. Or what? You'll shoot me in front of her? Show her exactly what kind of man you really are? Lucien's expression was carved from ice. I don't need to shoot you, Marcus. I just need you to stop. The name hit like a bomb. Marcus. Selene's head whipped toward the masked figure. You're... He pulled off the balaclava. The face underneath was older than the photograph she'd seen, harder, with lines that spoke of 3 years spent running, but the eyes were the same, sharp, calculating. The eyes of a man who'd destroyed her life and disappeared into smoke. Surprise, Marcus said. His smile was bitter. Bet you didn't expect this reunion. Selene couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The 2 men who'd ruined her life were standing in the same room, and she was trapped between them like prey between predators. What is this? Her voice came out strangled. This is endgame, Lucien said. He moved forward slowly, his men keeping pace. Marcus has been hiding for 3 years, building a case against me, collecting evidence, waiting for the right moment to strike. And when I brought you back, when I gave you the foundation position, he couldn't resist. He had to reach out, had to try to turn you against me. Because she deserves to know the truth, Marcus snapped. She deserves to know what you're really doing with that foundation, what you're going to pin on her when it all comes crashing down. I'm not pinning anything on anyone. Liar. Marcus held up the USB drive. Everything's on here. Every transaction, every shell company, every dollar you've laundered through those humanitarian programs. And she's about to see all of it. Lucien's jaw tightened. That drive is fabricated, fake data designed to look real. He's been planning this for months, creating false evidence, waiting for me to bring you back, knowing I'd give you the foundation position because it's the right thing to do. Is it? Marcus laughed, sharp and cruel. Or is it because you need someone to take the fall when the FBI shows up? Someone with a history of exposing fraud. Someone who'll look guilty from day one. Enough! Lucien's voice cracked like a whip. You stole $40 million. You framed an innocent woman. You destroyed lives to save yourself, and now you're trying to do it again because you're desperate and cornered, and you know I'm closing in. I stole money to expose you. I framed her because I had no choice. You always have a choice, Marcus. You just keep making the wrong one. They were circling each other now, the tactical team holding position, and Selene realized with horror that this wasn't about her at all. This was about two men who'd been at war for 3 years, and she was just a piece on their board, a pawn they were both trying to control. Stop. The word came out raw. Both men turned to look at her. Both of you just stop. Miss Vale, Lucien started. No, I don't want to hear it. Not from you, not from him, not from anyone. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. I came here for the truth, and all I'm getting is two liars telling me different stories that both make me the victim. You are the victim, Marcus said. Then give me the drive. Let me see what's on it. Selene, don't... Lucien's voice held a warning. Why not? If it's fake, like you say, I'll know. If it's real, she swallowed. Then I deserve to know before I walk into your trap tomorrow. Marcus held out the drive. Smart woman. Selene reached for it. Lucien moved faster than she'd thought possible, closed the distance between them in 3 strides, and grabbed her wrist. His grip was iron. Don't take it. Let go of me. Not until you listen. I said let go. She tried to pull away. His grip tightened. Pain shot up her arm, and something in Selene snapped. She drove her knee up hard into Lucien's stomach. He grunted, his grip loosening just enough for her to wrench free. She stumbled backward, her wrist throbbing, her breath coming in gasps. The tactical team raised their weapons, every single one pointed at her. Stand down, Lucien growled. His voice was strained but controlled. Don't touch her. Smart, Marcus said, because if they hurt her, everyone will know what you really are. Lucien straightened slowly. His eyes never left Selene. You think I'm the villain here. You think I brought you back to destroy you, but you're wrong. Then prove it, Selene said. Let me see what's on that drive. If it's fake, I'll know. If it's real, I'll know that too. And if it's somewhere in between, if it's real data taken out of context, if it's truth twisted just enough to look like lies, Lucien's voice went softer, almost pleading. Marcus is a master manipulator, Miss Vale. He destroyed you once. Don't let him do it again. I'm not the one holding her prisoner in a warehouse, Marcus said. You're the one who lured her here at night, alone, with threats and promises and half-truths designed to make her vulnerable. Lucien took a step toward her, careful, like approaching a wounded animal. I brought you back because you deserved it, because your talent was wasted, because I wanted to see what you could accomplish with real resources. That's the truth. Everything else is Marcus trying to burn me down by using you as kindling. Then why did you close the investigation 3 years ago? Selene's voice cracked. Why did you call me misconduct? Why did you make sure no one looked deeper into what Marcus was doing? Lucien went very still. You found the articles. I found everything. The Wall Street Journal piece, the quote where you called me the problem, the decision to settle without charges. Tears burned in her eyes. You let me burn, Lucien. You could have investigated Marcus thoroughly, could have cleared my name. But you chose not to, and now you want me to believe you're helping me? The silence in the warehouse was absolute. Then Lucien said, You're right. The admission hit like a slap. I closed the investigation, he continued. His voice was rough, raw. I called you misconduct. I settled quickly because digging deeper would have exposed things I didn't want exposed. Not because I was laundering money. He shot Marcus a look of pure hatred. But because the fraud Marcus committed implicated people I cared about, board members, executives, people who'd been with the company for decades and didn't deserve to have their reputations destroyed because Marcus was stealing. So you destroyed mine instead, Selene whispered. Yes. The word was brutal, honest. I made a calculation. One person's career versus dozens. One sacrifice versus protecting the company. And I chose wrong. He moved closer, slow, deliberate. I've spent 3 years regretting that decision. 3 years watching your name disappear from the industry while Marcus ran free with millions of stolen dollars. And when I finally tracked him down, when I finally had proof of what he'd done, I realized I couldn't just expose him. I had to fix what I'd broken first. By bringing me back. By giving you what you deserved, the position, the resources, the platform to do work that matters. His eyes burned into hers. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to let me make this right. By making me the director of programs that might be laundering money? There is no laundering, Lucien said through gritted teeth. That's Marcus's lie. Every dollar in the foundation is accounted for. Every program is legitimate. Every transaction is clean. I spent the past 3 years making sure of it because I knew Marcus would try something like this. Knew he'd try to frame me the way he framed you. Touching story, Marcus said. Too bad it's bullshit. He held up the USB drive again. All the proof she needs is right here. Take it, Selene. See for yourself who's lying. Selene looked between them. 2 men, 2 stories, both sounding true, both sounding like lies. And she still had no idea who to believe. Give me the drive, she said to Marcus. Selene, Lucien's voice held a warning. Give me the drive. Marcus smiled, tossed it to her. She caught it, felt the weight of it in her palm. Proof or poison? Truth or trap? Don't look at it here, Lucien said. His voice was tight. If there's data on there, real or fake, you need a secure computer, independent verification, not whatever story Marcus spins while standing over your shoulder. Scared of what you'll find? Marcus asked. Scared of you manipulating her while she's vulnerable. I'm not vulnerable, Selene snapped. I'm done. Done with both of you. Done with being a pawn in whatever war you're fighting. Done with people making decisions about my life without asking me. She shoved the drive in her pocket. I'm taking this. I'm leaving. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to figure out which one of you is lying. And when I do, her voice went cold. I'm going to burn your entire world down. She turned toward the door. You can't leave, Marcus said. Watch me. Selene, wait. Lucien started toward her. One of the tactical team members moved to block the exit, and that's when everything exploded. The warehouse door burst open, more tactical gear, more weapons. But these weren't Lucien's men. FBI! Everyone on the ground! Now! The room erupted into chaos. Lucien's team went for their weapons. The FBI team opened fire. Not bullets. Flashbangs that turned the world into white noise and ringing ears. Selene hit the ground hard, her head cracking against concrete, stars exploding behind her eyes. Someone grabbed her arm, hauled her up. She couldn't see, couldn't hear, could barely breathe through the chemical fog filling her lungs. Move now! A voice shouted in her ear. Male. Not Lucien. Not Marcus. She stumbled forward, half carried, half dragged, through the chaos. Gunfire now. Real gunfire. Sharp cracks that made her flinch with every shot. Someone screamed. Glass shattered. Metal screeched. Then cold air hit her face, and she was outside, being shoved into a vehicle, the door slamming behind her as the engine roared to life. Her vision cleared slowly. She was in the back of a van. Unmarked. 3 people with her, 2 in FBI jackets, 1 in tactical gear without identification. What? Her voice was hoarse. What's happening? The one in tactical gear pulled off his mask. Sarah. Oh my God, Selene breathed. Surprise, Sarah said. Her voice was steady, professional. Nothing like the frightened friend Selene remembered. We need to talk, and this time no one's listening. You're FBI? Not exactly, but close enough. Sarah pulled out a tablet, brought up files, documents, screenshots. Everything Lucien told you about Marcus was true. Everything Marcus told you about Lucien was true. They're both guilty. They've both been playing you, and you're about to become the scapegoat for both of them, unless you let me help. The van sped through dark streets. Behind them, sirens wailed. The warehouse was probably swarming with federal agents by now. Lucien and Marcus were either in custody or escaping, and Selene had no idea which outcome was worse. I don't understand, she whispered. You will. Sarah's expression was grim. But first you need to see this. All of it. The real truth. Not the version Lucien fed you, not the version Marcus tried to sell. The actual, documented, incontrovertible evidence of what's been happening for the past 3 years. She held out the tablet. And Selene, with shaking hands and a head that felt like it might split open, took it. The first document was a bank statement. Virelli Foundation accounts. Millions of dollars moving through educational programs in Latin America. Legitimate transfers. Real projects. Everything clean. Until Sarah swiped to the next page. Secondary accounts. Hidden transfers. Money flowing out of the legitimate programs into shell companies with names Selene recognized from 3 years ago. The same shell companies Marcus had used. But these transfers were dated 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, long after Marcus disappeared, which meant someone else had been using his infrastructure. "Keep reading," Sarah said quietly. Selene swiped. More documents, communications, emails between Lucien and people whose names were redacted, discussing resource allocation and alternative distribution channels, and maintaining operational security. Corporate language that meant exactly one thing. Lucien had been laundering money. Not when Marcus worked there. After. Using the very fraud scheme Marcus had built, running it quietly through humanitarian programs no one would question because who investigates charity? But there was more. Selene kept swiping, found communications from Marcus, recent ones, from the past year. He was working with someone, passing information, building a case, working with federal investigators. Marcus cut a deal 6 months ago, Sarah said. Full immunity in exchange for testimony against Lucien. He's been feeding us evidence ever since. The FBI was closing in, ready to move, and then Lucien brought you back. She paused. Offered you the exact position that would make you responsible for every transaction we're investigating. Selene's hands went numb. The tablet nearly fell. He was setting you up, she whispered. Completely. You take over Monday. 3 weeks later, the FBI raids the foundation. They find evidence of money laundering in programs under your direct control. Evidence with your signature on transfer approvals, your authorization on fund allocations. Sarah's voice was gentle, pitying. You'd be arrested immediately, and Lucien would walk away clean because everything points to you. But I didn't know. I didn't authorize anything. I haven't even started yet. Doesn't matter. Your predecessor authorized everything, but she died in a car accident 2 months ago. Sarah's expression said the accident wasn't an accident. And you're her replacement, which means legally you inherit responsibility for her actions. And Lucien made sure every paper trail leads directly to the director of international programs. The world tilted. Selene pressed her hand against the van wall to keep from falling, even though she was already sitting. Why are you telling me this? Her voice was barely audible. Because I was undercover. Embedded in Virelli Corporation for 18 months, gathering evidence, building the case. And when Lucien fired me as Sarah Chen and I had to disappear, she smiled without humor. I stayed on as an FBI consultant, helped Marcus build his testimony, helped the Bureau prepare for the raid. Then why warn me? Why not just arrest everyone? Because arresting Lucien without a replacement scapegoat means he might actually face consequences, and men like him don't go down easy. They have lawyers, resources, connections. They make evidence disappear and witnesses recant. Sarah leaned forward. But if we give him what he wants, if we let you start Monday, let him think his plan is working, he'll get sloppy, he'll make mistakes, and when we move, we'll have him so completely buried, he'll never see daylight again. Selene's breath came in short gasps. You want to use me as bait? I want to give you the choice Lucien never did. Work with us. Let him think he's got you trapped. And when the time comes, you testify about everything. The coercion, the manipulation, the setup. You help us put him away forever. Sarah's eyes were hard. Or walk away now. Disappear. Change your name. We'll protect you. But Lucien walks free, and someone else becomes his next victim. The van stopped. They were somewhere industrial, abandoned. The kind of place where conversations happened that couldn't happen anywhere else. What do I have to do? Selene asked. Take the position. Start Monday. Do exactly what Lucien expects. And when he asks you to sign documents, to authorize transfers, to put your name on things, Sarah's voice dropped. You do it. Every single time. Because we're recording everything, building an airtight case, and your cooperation is the key to making sure he never destroys anyone else. And if he realizes what I'm doing, then you're dead. Sarah said it flatly. Matter of fact. Lucien Virelli doesn't forgive betrayal, and he doesn't leave witnesses, so you'll have to be perfect, convincing. You'll have to make him believe you trust him right up until the moment we take him down. Celine's whole body shook. I can't do this. Yes, you can, because you're stronger than you think, braver than you know, and you've already survived being destroyed once. Sarah gripped her shoulder. This time, you get to be the one doing the destroying. The choice sat in front of Selene like a cliff edge. Walk away and live safely in the shadows, or step forward and become the weapon that finally brought Lucien Virelli to his knees. Both options terrified her, but only one felt like justice. When do we start? She heard herself say. Sarah smiled. Already started. You go home now. Pretend tonight never happened. Tomorrow, Lucien will contact you, probably apologize for the chaos, tell you Marcus escaped and the FBI has nothing. You play shocked, scared, grateful he protected you. And then? Then you show up Monday morning and become the best damn director the Virelli Foundation has ever seen. Because the better you are at the job, the more Lucien trusts you, and the more he trusts you. Sarah's smile went sharp. The harder he falls. The van door opened. They were 3 blocks from Celine's apartment, close enough to walk, far enough that no one would connect the van to her building. One more thing, Sarah said as Selene climbed out. Marcus was telling you the truth tonight about the drive, about the evidence, but he's also working with us. Everything on that USB is real, documented, and admissible in court. Keep it safe. You might need it. Selene touched her pocket. The drive was still there. Proof. Evidence. Truth in a format small enough to destroy empires. Why didn't you tell me all this when you called before? She asked. Because Lucien was listening. He's always listening. And if I told you the truth then, he would have known we were coming. Sarah's expression softened. I'm sorry I scared you. Sorry I made you think you were alone, but you were never alone. We've been watching, waiting, making sure you survived long enough to help us finish this. Selene nodded, turned to walk away. Selene! She looked back. Don't trust anyone, Sarah said. Not me, not Marcus, not the FBI, and definitely not Lucien. The only person you can trust is yourself. Remember that. Then the van door closed and it drove away, leaving Selene standing on a dark street at midnight with a USB drive full of evidence and the knowledge that her entire life had just become a weapon. She walked home slowly, climbed the fire escape again, quieter this time, more careful. The security team was still outside her front door, completely unaware she'd ever left. Inside her apartment, she locked every lock, checked every window, and sat on her bed with her laptop and the USB drive in hands that wouldn't stop shaking. She should plug it in, should look at the evidence, should verify that everything Sarah told her was true. But if she looked, she couldn't unknow it. If she looked, she was committed. If she looked, there was no going back to the person she'd been yesterday. The person who just wanted her career back, who thought power and respect were the same thing, who believed that visibility meant safety. That person was dead now, killed in a warehouse surrounded by liars and weapons and the wreckage of 3 years spent running. Selene Vale plugged in the drive and spent the next 6 hours reading every document, every email, every transaction that proved Lucien Virelli had used her once before and was preparing to use her again. Only this time, she wasn't going to burn quietly. This time, she was going to burn him first. When dawn broke over Manhattan, Selene closed her laptop and made 3 decisions. First, she was taking the position at the Virelli Foundation. Second, she was going to be the best director they'd ever had. Meticulous, brilliant, irreproachable. Third, she was going to document every illegal thing Lucien asked her to do, save every piece of evidence, and when the FBI finally moved, she was going to make sure he went down so completely that no amount of money or power could save him. Her phone buzzed. Text from Lucien. From, I'm sorry about last night. Marcus is dangerous. FBI has him in custody now. You're safe. See you Monday. We have work to do. Selene stared at the message. Then she typed back exactly what Sarah had told her to say. Thank you for protecting me. I was terrified. I'm so grateful you were there. See you Monday. She hit send and felt something inside her chest turn to steel. because Lucien Virelli had underestimated her. He'd thought she was still the woman who could be destroyed with threats and lies and manufactured scandal. But that woman had died 3 years ago in a corporate office when her career went up in flames. The woman who'd climbed out of those ashes was someone different, someone harder, someone who'd spent 3 years learning how to survive in the dark. And now she was walking back into Lucien's world with her eyes open and her weapons loaded and absolutely no intention of being anyone's victim ever again. Monday morning, she'd put on her armor, the black dress, the confident smile, the performance of gratitude and trust, and then she'd start building the case that would destroy him. Not quickly, not obviously, but thoroughly, completely. The way he destroyed her. Only this time, when the flames came, Lucien Virelli would be the one burning, and Selene Vale would be the one holding the match. Monday morning arrived like a sentencing. Selene stood in front of her bathroom mirror at 5 a.m., staring at a face she barely recognized. The woman looking back had slept 3 hours in the past 72, had dark circles under her eyes that concealer couldn't quite hide, had hands that trembled when she tried to apply eyeliner, forcing her to start over twice. But beneath the exhaustion was something else, something that hadn't been there a week ago. Steel. She dressed carefully. The black suit she'd bought for the gala, armor disguised as professionalism, hair pulled back in a way that said competent, not compliant. Minimal jewelry. No perfume. Nothing that suggested she was trying to be anything other than exactly what Lucien expected. Grateful, capable, and completely under his control. The USB drive sat in her desk drawer, contents memorized. She'd spent Sunday documenting everything on her personal laptop, uploading copies to 3 separate encrypted cloud accounts Sarah had provided. Insurance. Evidence. The kind of ammunition that could take down empires if fired at the right moment. Her phone buzzed. Text from Sarah, sent from a number that would disappear in 12 hours. Remember, you're just doing your job. Be brilliant. Be trustworthy. And when he asks you to sign something questionable, you smile and ask where. Selene didn't respond, just deleted the message and watched it vanish like it had never existed. Outside her apartment, the security team was waiting. New faces today. Lucien had rotated them after Friday night's warehouse incident, probably assuming the old team had been compromised. These 2 looked harder, more alert, the kind of men who wouldn't hesitate if given orders that involved making problems disappear. "Miss Vale," one of them said. "Car's downstairs." She followed them without speaking. The ride to the Virelli Foundation building took 20 minutes through morning traffic that felt like it was deliberately moving slow, giving her too much time to think about what she was walking into. The foundation occupied 15 floors of a glass tower in Midtown. Modern, clean, the kind of space that screamed legitimacy and humanitarian values while money moved through its veins in ways that had nothing to do with charity. Selene had studied the building layout over the weekend, knew which floors housed finance, which held program operations, which were executive territory where Lucien's real power lived. Her office was on the 15th floor, corner space with windows that overlooked the city and a desk that was bigger than her apartment's kitchen. When she walked in, coffee was already waiting, exactly how she took it, which meant someone had done research or Lucien had provided very specific instructions about how to make her feel welcome. "Miss Vale." A woman appeared in the doorway. Early 30s, efficient-looking, with the kind of smile that was professional but not warm. "I'm Jennifer Park, your executive assistant. Mr. Virelli asked me to get you settled. The team meeting is at 9 and your one-on-one with him is at 10. "Thank you." Selene's voice came out steadier than she felt. Jennifer walked her through the basics. Computer login, building access, staff directory, program files dating back 3 years, all neatly organized in digital folders that probably looked legitimate to anyone who didn't know what to look for. But Selene knew. She'd spent 6 hours reading through Sarah's evidence, learning to recognize the patterns. Secondary accounts hiding inside primary budgets. Transfer authorizations buried in routine paperwork. The architecture of fraud dressed up as humanitarian work. By 8:45, she'd reviewed enough to make her stomach turn. The previous director, the woman who'd died in that convenient car accident, had authorized 17 questionable transfers in her final 6 months. Small amounts. Nothing that would trigger immediate red flags. But cumulatively, Millions of dollars had moved through educational programs in Guatemala and infrastructure projects in Vietnam into accounts that had nothing to do with helping people. And now those authorizations were Celine's responsibility. Jennifer returned at 8:50. Teams waiting in conference room B. Selene followed her down a hallway lined with photographs of smiling children and completed projects and all the performative evidence of good work the foundation did alongside the criminal work it hid. 12 people sat around a conference table when she entered: program managers, finance directors, operations staff, all of them looking at her with expressions that ranged from curiosity to skepticism to something that might have been fear. They thought she was Lucien's puppet, his plant, the person he'd installed to take the fall. They weren't wrong. Good morning? Selene set her leather portfolio on the table with more force than necessary. I'm Selene Vale. Most of you know why I'm here. For those who don't, 3 years ago, I exposed fraud at Virelli Corporation and paid the price for it. My career was destroyed, my reputation was shredded, and I spent 36 months rebuilding myself from nothing. She paused, meeting each person's eyes in turn. I'm not here to be anyone's scapegoat. I'm here to do work that matters, real work. And if any of you have a problem with that, there's the door. Silence. Then one of the managers, middle-aged man with gray streaking his temples, cleared his throat. Miss Vale, we're all aware of your history, but I think I speak for everyone when I say we're reserving judgment until we see what kind of director you actually are. Fair enough. Selene spent the next 40 minutes asking questions that made it clear she wasn't going to rubber stamp anything. Budget allocations, program metrics, success rates, transfer protocols, every question designed to sound like due diligence while actually mapping the exact mechanisms Sarah had told her to look for. And the team's answers confirmed what she already knew. The fraud was real, ongoing, and everyone in this room either knew about it or suspected but was too scared to ask. By 9:40, the meeting ended. People filed out with expressions that suggested they weren't sure if they should be relieved or terrified that someone was finally asking hard questions. Jennifer appeared again. Mr. Virelli's ready for you. Selene's pulse kicked up. This was it. The first real test. If she couldn't convince Lucien that she was exactly what he needed, grateful, compliant, useful, then everything Sarah had planned would collapse. She followed Jennifer to an elevator that required a key card for the top floor, rode it up in silence while her reflection stared back from polished metal walls, looking far more confident than she felt. The doors opened into a reception area she recognized from Friday morning. Same art, same furniture, same receptionist who looked at Selene like she was something unpleasant that kept reappearing. He's expecting you, the receptionist said without warmth. Lucien's office looked different in daylight, less intimidating. The window showed the city stretched out below, and somehow the view made everything feel smaller, more manageable. Like the power concentrated in this room was just one piece of a much larger game. Lucien stood by those windows, phone pressed to his ear. I don't care what the board prefers. Make it happen, because I said so. That's final. He hung up, turned around. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then Lucien smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Director Vale, welcome to your first day. Thank you for the opportunity. The words tasted like ash. How was the team meeting? Productive. They're cautious, smart, waiting to see what kind of leader I am before they decide if they trust me. And what kind of leader are you? Selene held his gaze. The kind who gets results. Good. He moved to his desk, pulled out a folder. Then let's discuss what results I'm expecting. The Foundation has 17 active programs across 12 countries, combined annual budget of $80 million. Your predecessor did adequate work, but adequate isn't what I brought you here for. What did you bring me here for? The question hung between them like a challenge. Lucien's expression shifted, something that might have been approval, or might have been calculation. I brought you here to transform mediocre humanitarian work into something exceptional, to build programs that actually change lives instead of just looking good in annual reports, and to prove that second chances aren't just performative gestures. He paused. Can you do that? Yes. Even with everything that happened Friday night? Even knowing Marcus is out there, probably planning his next move? Even with the FBI sniffing around, looking for evidence that doesn't exist, Selene's throat was tight, especially because of all that. Because if I let fear stop me from doing work that matters, then Marcus wins. Then everyone who destroyed my career wins, and I'm done letting other people's choices define my life. The words came out more honest than she'd intended, and for a moment, just a flash, something shifted in Lucien's expression, something that looked almost like respect. Spoken like someone who's learned how to survive, he said quietly. I had a good teacher. Who? Myself, because no one else was there to teach me. Lucien was quiet for a beat. Then he opened the folder. These are the Q2 budget proposals. 3 programs need expansion funding, 2 need operational restructuring, and 1, he slid a document across the desk, needs authorization for a transfer that the previous director flagged before she died. Selene picked up the paper. Read it carefully. It was exactly what Sarah had warned her about, a transfer authorization for an educational program in Guatemala. $2 million to build schools and train teachers. All legitimate on the surface. But buried in the line items was a secondary allocation. $500,000 for administrative overhead and local partnership development. That was the laundering, hidden in plain sight. Money that would disappear into shell companies while the real program got funding too. Her hands didn't shake. She'd practiced this moment 100 times in her mind. This overhead allocation seems high, she said. 25% for administrative costs when industry standard is closer to 15%. Lucien's eyes sharpened. The previous director had concerns about that too. What happened to those concerns? She died before she could address them. Car accident. Very tragic. His tone suggested exactly how tragic it actually was. Selene set the paper down. I'll need to review the full budget breakdown before I authorize anything. I want to see exactly where that overhead is going and why it's necessary. Something flickered across Lucien's face, surprise maybe, or annoyance. That level of scrutiny will slow down the approval process. Good. If we're spending foundation money, we should know exactly what we're spending it on. If that makes me inconvenient, she met his eyes, then I guess you picked the wrong director. The silence stretched. Lucien leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Then he smiled. Really smiled. You're going to be a problem, aren't you? I'm going to be thorough. Same thing. But he didn't sound angry. He sounded pleased, like she'd just passed a test she didn't know she was taking. Fine. Review the budget. Ask questions. Make the finance team explain every line item if you want. Just don't take so long that programs stall. I won't. Good. Because Miss Vale, he stood, moved around the desk until he was close enough that she could smell his cologne. I didn't bring you here to be a rubber stamp. I brought you here to actually run these programs, to make real decisions, to be the director this foundation needs, not just the one it had before. So if you see something wrong, if you find something that doesn't make sense, if anyone tries to push through authorizations without proper justification, his voice dropped. You stop them. Understood? What? Ois? Eat. It was perfect. The exact permission she needed to dig into every questionable transaction while looking like she was just doing her job well. Too perfect. Which meant Lucien was either genuinely expecting her to find problems and fix them, or he was setting her up so thoroughly that when the FBI moved, every piece of evidence would point directly at her meticulous oversight as proof she knew exactly what was happening. Understood, Selene said. Excellent. Jennifer will set up meetings with each program manager, start building relationships, learning the work. And Miss Vale? He moved back to the windows. Welcome to the foundation. I think you're going to do extraordinary things here. The dismissal was clear. Selene left before her composure could crack. Back in her office, she closed the door and pressed her palms against the desk until her hands stopped shaking. Then she pulled out her phone and sent a coded message to the number Sarah had given her. He asked me to review the Guatemala budget. Playing exactly like you said. The response came in seconds. Perfect. Document everything. We're watching. Selene deleted both messages, pulled up the Guatemala program files, and started building the case that would eventually destroy the man who just welcomed her to his foundation. The next 3 weeks passed like a masterclass in deception. Selene became exactly what Lucien needed her to be, Brilliant, thorough, meticulous to the point of obsession. She reviewed every budget, questioned every transfer, made the finance team explain allocations until they dreaded seeing her name on meeting invites. And slowly, carefully, she began documenting every single irregularity she found. The Guatemala program had 17 questionable line items. The Vietnam infrastructure project had 12. Educational programs in El Salvador, Honduras, and Ecuador all had similar patterns. Legitimate work funded alongside shadow allocations that disappeared into accounts she couldn't trace. But she kept authorizing them, every single one, because Sarah had been clear. They needed evidence of ongoing criminal activity, not just past misdeeds. They needed Selene's signature on documents that showed she was either complicit or incompetent. And when the time came, when the FBI finally moved, she'd have her own documentation proving she'd flagged every concern, requested clarification on every questionable item, and been overruled or reassured by people above her who insisted everything was legitimate. Lucien watched her work with something that looked like approval. They met weekly, sometimes more. He asked detailed questions about programs, about budget decisions, about her strategic vision for expanding the foundation's impact. And every conversation felt like a chess game where they were both playing two different boards simultaneously. On the surface, they were director and board member discussing humanitarian work. Underneath, they were predator and prey trying to figure out who would strike first. By the end of week 3, Selene had authorized 8 transfers totaling $6 million. All documented, all flagged in her private records, all sent with her digital signature that would either prove her guilt or her cooperation, depending on which side of the investigation you believed. And then Marcus resurfaced. The message came on a Thursday night. Selene was working late, reviewing proposals for a new women's health initiative in Guatemala, when her computer screen flickered, then went black, then displayed a single line of text. Check your personal email, now. M. Her blood went cold. She pulled out her phone, opened her personal account. New message from an address that was just random letters and numbers. No subject line. One attachment. She opened it. Video file. Grainy security footage from inside what looked like Lucien's office. Date stamp showed 3 years ago, right around the time Selene was being fired. 2 men in the frame, Lucien and Marcus sitting across from each other, having a conversation the audio was too poor to make out clearly, but lip readers could probably figure it out. And even without sound, the body language was clear. This wasn't a fight. This was a negotiation. Marcus was showing Lucien something on a tablet. Lucien was nodding. They were discussing terms, making plans. And at one point, Marcus pointed to something on the screen, and Lucien smiled, the kind of smile that suggested approval, not anger. The video ended. Selene's hands trembled. She played it again and again, trying to figure out what she was seeing, trying to understand why Marcus would send this now. Her phone buzzed, text from the same random number. You think Lucien is setting you up? You're right. But you think Marcus is helping you. You're wrong. We've been working together since the beginning, and you've been our scapegoat twice now. The room spun. Selene gripped the edge of her desk. Another text. The FBI raid happens Monday, 3 days from now. They'll arrest you at the foundation with evidence showing you authorized every fraudulent transfer. And both Lucien and I will testify that you knew exactly what you were doing. Her phone rang. Sarah's current number. Selene answered with shaking hands. Tell me Marcus is lying. Silence. Then Sarah's voice, tight with something that sounded like regret. I can't. The floor dropped out. What? Marcus and Lucien have been working together since the beginning. The theft, the frame-up, all of it. They staged it. Marcus took the money, Lucien closed the investigation, and they split everything 50-50. You were always the plan, the perfect scapegoat, someone smart enough to be credible, but powerless enough to be destroyed. Selene couldn't breathe. You told me. I told you what I needed to tell you to get you into position, because the FBI has been investigating both of them for 18 months, and we needed someone inside the foundation with enough access to document everything. Someone who'd sign authorizations because she thought she was building evidence. Someone who'd cooperate because she thought she was getting justice. Sarah's voice went colder. You've been our asset, Selene. And Monday, you become our witness, whether you want to or not. You used me. The words came out strangled. We gave you a choice. Work with us or walk away. You chose to work with us. And now we're finishing the job. By making me look guilty? By making the case so airtight that both Lucien and Marcus go down for decades. And yes, that means you'll face charges initially, but we have everything. The documentation you've been keeping, the flagged concerns, the request for clarification, all of it proves you were doing exactly what you were supposed to. Due diligence. And when you testify about the coercion, the manipulation, the threats, Sarah paused. The jury will see you as a victim, and they'll send both of them to prison. Unless they don't, unless I get convicted too. That won't happen. You can't guarantee that. No, Sarah admitted, but I can guarantee that if you run now, if you disappear before Monday, both of them walk free, and every dollar they've stolen, every person they've destroyed, every crime they've committed, none of it gets punished. They win, again. And you spend the rest of your life knowing you had the chance to stop them and chose yourself instead. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Not because Sarah was wrong, but because she was completely right. I could go to the press, Selene said, release everything, blow this open before Monday, and they'd bury you. Lucien has connections, resources, lawyers who'd tear you apart before you finished your first interview, and Marcus has immunity. Any evidence against him is inadmissible in court unless we present it the right way. Sarah's voice softened. I know this isn't fair. I know you didn't sign up to be collateral damage, but you're the only person who can finish this. And if you do, if you see it through, I promise you'll walk away free. Your promises aren't worth much right now. No, they're not, but they're all you have. Selene hung up, sat in her office with the lights off and the video playing on loop, and the terrible understanding that she'd been played by everyone. Lucien had used her, Marcus had used her, the FBI had used her, and in 72 hours she'd either be the hero who brought down 2 criminals or the scapegoat who went to prison alongside them. Her phone buzzed again. Text from Lucien. Dinner tomorrow night? My place. We should celebrate 3 successful weeks. The timing was too perfect. Tomorrow night, 36 hours before the raid. One final opportunity for him to tie up loose ends, ensure she was completely trapped, maybe even get her to sign one more authorization that would seal her fate. She should run, should disappear into the night and never look back. Instead, she typed, what time? Because running meant they won. And Selene Vale was done losing. Friday evening, Selene stood outside Lucien's building with a wire taped to her ribs and a recording device hidden in her purse that the FBI had provided through Sarah that morning. The wire itched. The device felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, and every step toward the lobby felt like walking to her own execution. The security guard recognized her, waved her through without questions. The elevator ride to the penthouse took 30 seconds that felt like hours. When the doors opened, Lucien was waiting. He'd dressed casually again, dark jeans, black shirt, no jacket. And somehow the informality made him more dangerous, not less. Like he didn't need armor because he'd already won. Miss Vale, he smiled. Genuine warmth that made her want to scream. Come in, dinner's almost ready. The apartment smelled like garlic and wine and something cooking that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Lucien led her to the dining area where the table was set for 2. Crystal glasses, expensive plates, candles that suggested intimacy instead of business. You cooked? She asked. I tried. We'll see if it's edible. He poured wine, handed her a glass. To 3 successful weeks. And to many more. Selene forced herself to smile, to touch her glass to his, to take a sip of wine that tasted like poison going down. They sat. Lucien served pasta that actually looked impressive, started talking about foundation programs, about the Guatemala schools that were finally getting built, about her vision for expanding into new regions. And all Selene could think about was the wire against her skin and the raid coming Monday, and the fact that this man sitting across from her had destroyed her life twice and was about to try for a 3rd time. You've been quiet tonight, Lucien said. Everything okay? Just tired. It's been an intense 3 weeks. It has, but you've handled it beautifully. Better than I expected, honestly. He refilled her wine. I wasn't sure how you'd adapt, whether you could handle the pressure of this position after everything you've been through. but you've proven me wrong. In a good way? In the best way. His eyes found hers across the table. You're not who I thought you were, Miss Vale. Who did you think I was? Someone broken. Someone who'd be grateful enough to do whatever I asked without questions. Someone I could control. He paused. But you're not controllable, are you? You ask questions. You push back. You make people uncomfortable. You're exactly what this foundation needs. The compliment should have felt good. Instead, it felt like a noose tightening. What do you want from me, Lucien? The question came out before she could stop it. Really, not the rehearsed answer, not the story about redemption and second chances. What do you actually want? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he set down his fork. The truth? Please? I want to see what happens when someone like you gets real power. Not the fake power of titles and corner offices. Real power. The kind that changes systems, moves mountains, makes the impossible possible. He leaned forward. You had a taste of that before Marcus destroyed everything. I want to see what you'd do if you had it again, if you had resources and protection and no one holding you back. Why does it matter to you? Because... He stopped. Something crossed his face too fast to read. Because I think you're extraordinary, and I think the world needs more extraordinary people in positions where they can actually do something that matters. It sounded so honest, so genuine, and that's what made it so dangerous, because some part of it probably was true. Maybe Lucien did believe she was talented. Maybe he did want to see what she could accomplish. But he also needed her to take the fall when everything collapsed. Both things could be true simultaneously. What happens Monday? Selene asked quietly. Lucien's expression shifted. What do you mean? Marcus sent me a video of the two of you from 3 years ago, having a conversation that looked a lot like a negotiation, not a fight. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Lucien leaned back in his chair. I was wondering when he'd play that card. So it's real. It's real. And it's also completely out of context. He stood, walked to the windows. 3 years ago, Marcus came to me with evidence of his own fraud. Told me he'd been stealing for months. Said he had a plan to disappear but needed my help closing the investigation quickly so no one looked too deep. He turned around. I refused, told him I'd expose everything. And that's when he showed me the secondary evidence he'd fabricated. Documents that made it look like I'd been complicit from the beginning, like I'd approved his theft. Ying. Selene's heart hammered. What did you do? I made a deal. He'd disappear. I'd close the investigation, and we'd both pretend the fraud died with your termination. His jaw tightened. I'm not proud of it, but I was protecting the company, protecting people who didn't deserve to have their careers destroyed because Marcus was a criminal. You were protecting yourself. That too. He didn't deny it. But Miss Vale, that video doesn't prove what Marcus thinks it proves. It doesn't show me helping him steal. It shows me being blackmailed into silence. There's a difference. Is there? You tell me. You've spent 3 weeks investigating every program in this foundation. Have you found evidence that I'm laundering money? That I'm using humanitarian work to hide fraud? Selene's throat was tight. I've found irregularities. Administrative overhead that's higher than standard. I know. Every major foundation has the same issue because real humanitarian work is expensive and messy and doesn't fit into neat budget percentages. He moved closer. But have you found actual evidence of criminal activity? Money disappearing? Accounts that shouldn't exist? Transfers that can't be explained? She wanted to say yes. Wanted to throw Sarah's evidence in his face and watch him try to explain it away. But the truth was more complicated. She'd found patterns that looked suspicious. Allocations that seemed questionable, but every single one had explanations that sounded legitimate if you didn't already believe Lucien was guilty. Administrative overhead, local partnership fees, operational contingencies. The smoking gun Sarah had promised didn't actually exist in the Foundation's current operations, which meant either Lucien had been very careful to cover his tracks in the past 3 years, or he was telling the truth, and Marcus was the one lying. I don't know what to believe anymore, Selene whispered. Then believe this. Lucien closed the distance between them, stood close enough that she could see the tension in his jaw, the tightness around his eyes. Monday morning, the FBI is going to raid the Foundation.